Tinfoil hat. Oh, what the fuck are you guys even talking about?
Global controls will have to be imposed, and a world governing body will be created to enforce them.
Welcome to Tinfoil Hat. We go deep, homeboy. Aaron, open your mind. Drink from the fountain of knowledge. There's lizard people everywhere. That's some interdimensional shit. Wake up, Aaron.
This is only the beginning.
Dude, you just blew my mind.
Are you ready to get your mind blown?
All right, welcome to Tinfoil Hat. We are live from the Wise Wolf Gold and Silver Studios. Go to samtripoli.gold. Use the promo code TINFOIL, and you can get in on the Precious Metals game for as little as $50 a month. We're very excited to have our guests back. We're going to get into a lot of stuff. Everything you've ever wanted to talk about on the subjects we're about to touch, we're going to get into. He's a podcaster, researcher, and author. Please welcome Ed Mabrie. How are you, buddy?
I'm great, Sam. Great to be on with Sweet Sammy T and and the J Dog and Exegy. I'm happy to be back.
J Dog. We haven't heard that.
I can't call him Juicy Johnny. That's more of a J.
You're allowed to. You're a Christian man. You're a Christian man. It's an honor and a privilege to have you on once again. Always a pleasure to talk to you. You run a great Sunday meeting with a bunch of people. I'm sorry I haven't been able to hit it in a long time. Okay. Sundays are just super slam for me. But when I was there, I thought it was a wonderful discussion. A lot of eager people to learn. And you and the gentleman you ran it with did a great job of disseminating information. I thought it was great. So, Ed, for those who may not be familiar with you, with your past episodes with us, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where our listeners can find you?
Sure. Thanks for that, Sam. So my organization, I don't like to call it a ministry. It sounds too formal. My organization is called Faith by Reason, and the main website is faithbyreason.net. That's my legacy site, where you can find a lot of the work that I've been doing for the past, 10 plus years. And the whole purpose, the goal of Faith by Reason is to help Christians and anyone who's interested really understand Christian philosophy, to understand our faith and how and why our faith makes sense. And I do that using reason, logic, and systematic analysis. I'm a systems thinker. I'm a strategic thinker. I'm an analyst. And that's how I approach biblical studies. And so the really big picture goal is to just increase and enhance our walk with God, our walk with Jehovah. And we do that by understanding who he is, how he does things, his methodology, his will for us, his personality. And if you understand all of those things, then you have the perfect context for understanding the Bible, for interpreting it, and for applying it to your life. And so that's what I want to do, is help people understand that. That is my passion. Just one more thing. So faithbyreason.net is the main site. Again, legacy site, but where I'm really pushing people now is my Patreon. So it's patreon.com/faithbyreason. That's where all the action is. That's where I'm interacting with people. And if you go there, you will get all my content drops there first before it even goes on my website. You'll also get bonus episodes that I don't put anyplace else, because I already have 2 strikes against me on YouTube. So who knows how long that's going to last. So I keep all my really crazy stuff and highly theoretical things in my bonus episodes. I also do a Q&A. Thank you for pulling that up, Johnny. I also have a Q&A. If you ask me questions, then I do a video every week where I answer the hardcore, challenging questions that nobody else wants to deal with. You bring them to me and I will answer them for you. And if you go a level up, you can be part of the Bible study that Sam was just talking about. So in our Bible study, it's called the Jehovah Story Book Club. And in that Bible study, we go through the entire Bible in a year, but we do it from the supernatural standpoint, from the spiritual standpoint. So we don't focus on what's going on earth so much as we look at what's going on behind the scenes, because that's 80% of the Bible. I think that the reason that a lot of people have trouble understanding the Bible and God's will and the way he does things is because they're just looking at it from the human point of view, as if it's our story. It's not. It's Jehovah's story. And people have told me their lives have been changed. And Sam, you were a part of it last year. You sat in on a few of our sessions. So, you can attest to the fact that we go deep and we go behind the veil. And People are loving it, and I learn something new every year that I do it. So I highly encourage people to be a part of it.
I think it's great. I had a great time on it. So, and I look forward to when you start it up again.
Yeah.
So there's been discussions on this show in the past about this passage in the Bible talking about God wanting to wipe out the Canaanites. And Johnny and I always discuss, you know, is the Bible, are they literally talking about killing women and children, or is it like just the speak of the time where way back in the day they weren't as sensitive as we were, and it was like they just talked a little bit more rougher, let's say, than we do today. We sometimes are more sensitive than maybe we should be. And there's a lot of discussions about the Canaanites, what they represented. Jordan Peterson, who looked like I hate to say it because I'm a recovering drug addict, he didn't look like he had all of his facilities with him at the time of this debate he had with, they do the 20-on-1s. And, he couldn't answer the question about, was God calling for genocide? And the kid, the non-binary or whoever he was talking to was talking about, like, God wants to kill children and all that stuff. I have my own personal opinions. Johnny and I talked about it either the last episode or episode before that, but I know you got a lot of stuff you want to get in. I would love to get your opinion on that.
No, Sam, this is perfect. Actually, this is why I love Sweet Sammy T, because you know how to tee it up.
Get it. You're out, Johnny.
You're a savant, Sam. Because I actually was going to talk about this. Believe it or not, I was going to talk about this in a different context.
Tell Johnny that I'm psychic. He refuses. His Southern values won't know that he's with a savant.
Yeah. So
Sammy T.
So I'm going to address this, but let me frame it really quick with something that I was going to make the framework of our whole discussion today, so I can bring it up now. And that is, there is a huge difference between reading the Bible and studying the Bible. If you read the Bible, you're getting data, you're getting the words, and you can make those words, and people do it. You can make those words mean anything you want them to mean if you divorce them from context and doctrine. If you just put the words out there, you can make them mean anything. I mean, you can look at a phrase in the Bible like, the Lord is our rock, and Jesus is living water. And you can, if you just look at the word, you can say, okay, well, if I'm worshiping a rock, I'm worshiping God. Or if I worship water, I'm worshiping Jesus. So that's nature worship. Look, the Bible advocates nature worship. You can do that if you just look at the words. Words can be manipulated, but you also have to look at, because the words are the what. But context is the why, and doctrine is the how. Context is asking some simple questions. Who's speaking? Who's being spoken to? What is the situation that's being addressed? To what degree does it apply to you? What is the language being spoken? What is the culture, vernacular, things like that? And then the how is the doctrine, and that's how you tie it to the bigger picture. Because the Bible is 66 books written by 40 authors over hundreds of years, but it's actually an integrated message from God. The Holy Spirit is the actual author of the Bible. So there's one big story. And so you have to ask yourself, how does what I'm reading connect to that bigger story, which is, that's what I do at Faith by Reason, is help people understand that big picture. So if you do that, then you don't have the liberty of just making the words mean anything you want. They can only mean what you read if you read them in context, language, culture, vernacular, and who's being spoken to and what's happening in the wider world, and how does it connect to the big picture. And we do that, in our regular world. We do that in all of our communication. I mean, for example, Sam, this happened to me yesterday. I got an email from my oldest son. He's in 5th grade, and he had to do a report. The teacher gave him a month to do it. Teacher emails me and says, hey, he hasn't done it, and it was due yesterday. And I told my wife, I said, you know what? When he gets home, I'm going to kill him. Now, if you just look at the words I said, you think you think you can make an argument that I'm going to physically murder my child.
Yes.
But you know that in our vernacular, in the context, I don't mean I'm going to really kill him. I'm going to be really angry with him, and I will punish him, but he's going to live. And in the wider context, I love my child. I don't want to kill him. So that's the whole point of it. So bringing this to what you were just talking about with the Canaanites and God's commandment to the Israelite army when they were taking the promised land after the Exodus, he did say that of certain tribes, you are to kill every man, woman, and child. And if you just look at those words, you can make the argument that the God of the Old Testament is a genocidal maniac. In fact, some people with an agenda do that. Like, for example, that fraud, Billy Carson. He put his entire, not his entire work, but a big part of his work is based on trying to convince people that the God of the Old Testament is the devil because of this particular verse. But if you do a little bit of study, you will see that God actually gave two sets of orders to the Israelite army. He set up certain tribes, he said to drive them out. The word is abed in Hebrew, to drive them out. That means to physically remove them off the land because that was not their land. That was a land that was promised to Abraham. God gave Abraham the legal right to that land. And he said, drive them out, kick them off the land. Just like if you own a piece of property and you get squatters on the property, what do? You call the sheriff removes them. He said for those tribes, drive them away. But then there were other tribes where he literally did say, kill every man, woman, and child. But if you do the study, you see that those tribes are Nephilim tribes. They are the Rephaim, the Zuzuim, the sons of Anak. They're not human. Those are the ones he said destroy completely. Why? Because Nephilim and humanity cannot coexist. The Nephilim will always kill off humanity. And when God told Abraham that he was promising him this land, but it would be 400 years before they took possession of it, well, that gave the bad guys, the spiritual evil, that gave them 400 years to lay down a bunch of landmines. And they did. The land was full of Nephilim. If you remember that story with Joshua and Caleb, where the 12 spies were sent in to spy out the land. And two other Joshua and Caleb's came back and said, the Lord's with us. Let's go get him. But the other 10 said, no, we can't. The Nephilim are in the land, the sons of Anak. We're like grasshoppers before them because they're giants. Those are the tribes where God said to kill every man, woman, and child because they're not human. So God is not a genocidal maniac. God is protecting his people from entities that are not his creation. And if you connect it to doctrine, every time God encounters the Nephilim, he wipes them out. That is his consistent doctrine. That was the whole reason for the flood. The reason for the flood is that the Nephilim had pretty much taken over the entire world. It's implied that Noah and his family were the only genetically pure humans left. So the problem with the flood was not a sin problem; it was a gene pool problem. And that's why. Yeah, so that's the answer to that, and the answer requires more study. It requires not just reading the words, but going deeper.
What are your thoughts, Johnny?
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. Yeah, I was gonna, you said that if someone's squatting in your house, you call the sheriff to evict them, and I was thinking, yeah, that's true everywhere except for L.A. Apparently, squat. Have you seen it? They have a rule now. You have to use. People are still squatting from the pandemic because of the restrictions they put in here. But yeah, that's fascinating. I totally buy that. I feel it's either that or the thing I always say, that it's difficult to take passages meant for the people of that time and kind of pull them out and
I agree,
to a modern lens.
But there is a cultural aspect of it, because God said to drive them out. But if they don't leave, then you can make war against them because they're squatting on your land.
Yeah, and that's just a different. I've always felt that those were different standards for a much different kind of person who was we see that throughout the Old Testament. God deals with humanity differently than he does, and then after the new covenant kind of changed. Right, he does change the relationship with humanity.
Well, actually, John, if you look at it in the Old and New Testaments, there are several different ways he deals with people during different eras.
Yeah.
So it changes. With Adam and Eve, they were innocent. They didn't know good and evil. So he dealt with them a certain way with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Then you had the antediluvian or pre-flood period where people were given long lives, and so he dealt with them a different way. Then after Babel, when he divided the world into nations, he dealt with people as nations. So he had his nation, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he dealt with the world through nations. And then he gave them the law, and he dealt with people through the law. He keeps making adjustments based on our screw ups. Adam and Eve screw up. Okay, I'll make an adjustment. The pre-flood people, they were given all this time to gain knowledge, and they used that knowledge they wanted more knowledge from the fallen angels, and that's how we get the whole Nephilim incident, which we'll probably touch on a little later. Then Babel, and he says, okay, he made another adjustment to deal with men through nations, and it goes on and on to our age, where he is dealing with us through through the Holy Spirit. If you accept Jesus, the Holy Spirit is inside of you and gives you moment by moment guidance. So he didn't deal with us through the Holy Spirit the way he dealt with people in a different era. But he's always asking the same question: will you choose me? Because we have free will. And so we
I
have to
think a
make that
lot
choice.
about that. And there's a lot of debates going on about the actions of high profile people. And, maybe I'm wrong, Ed. And like, I'm very early into my journey. Like I was telling Johnny, I think it was on BS, that I'm trying to find an Orthodox church near me just to go and learn and just kind of get community going. So my journey is very early into it. And so I'd love to ask you, Ed,
Mhm.
my opinion on a lot of things, especially social. Yeah, I have a very libertarian view of it. Okay. Um, I think jail should be for violent crimes where you hurt people or where you steal from people. If people are doing things that do not affect my life, I mean, on in the personal level, like in their home, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I just say when God gives you free will, you're going to choose what to do, and you either, because I think that Jesus was sent, Jesus God, and maybe I don't want to get into like that discussion so much, but Jesus was sent down to give us the blueprints how to survive this world that we live in, and like the cheat code to it in a way, right? Maybe my wording isn't perfect, but that's basically what I mean. Sent down to show us how to live a proper life in whatever this is that we live in.
Mhm.
And when people choose to go down certain paths, uh if they're not hurting people, in particular children, they're not stealing from people, I don't know if I want to get involved in that. I don't want the micromanaging of people, in particular by the government, which I think is anti-God, to decide what I can and cannot do. If they choose the let's just say the term I've heard a lot, to live a sinful life, am I wrong to be like that's between them and God?
No, you're not at all. So you said a lot of stuff there, but I want to focus on the law. You were saying should people go to jail for certain offenses? And I agree with you that if someone is not causing harm, I think that then they should, then, as long as they're not harming other people, then, I have no problem with them continuing to live their lives. I do a series on Faith by Reason called the Origin and Purpose of Human Government. And the purpose of human government is basically to homogenize us, to make us all the same. And we do that through laws. Why is that? Well, if you look at the original purpose of humanity, when God made Adam and Eve, what did he tell them? He said that you have dominion over the earth. You are the sovereigns. He made them the king and queen of the earth, and your children will be sovereigns. So we still have that in our DNA. We desire to be over our own plot of land and rule it, because we all have uniqueness. Every one of us is unique, and because we're all unique, we have something of value to give to the world that no one else has. So there is no one on earth like Sam Tripoli, or there's no one on earth like
Hell
Exegete, no one
yeah.
on earth like Johnny, which means that we have some, because we know what is
A lot of
valuable.
XGs out there, though. A lot of
Hey,
XGs.
hey, hey.
So what's valuable is things that are rare. Why is a diamond more valuable than a dirt rock? Because there are very few of them. So they're valuable. And with us, we are the most valuable thing on earth because there's no one else on earth like any individual. So we all have that capacity for greatness. Greatness is what you bring to the world and no one else can. The problem is that in order to be ruled over, you have to suppress the greatness of others. And that's what government does. Government is all about suppressing the greatness of the many so that the few can rule. Because otherwise, if you can't rule over great people, you can't. So the laws of the government are meant to homogenize us and make us all act the same.
I agree.
And when you make us all act the same, well, then that diminishes our individual greatness because we're supposed, hey, you have to all go to this one, you have to all get a job, go to school, get a job, work in a cubicle until you retire. We're all told to do the exact same thing. Well, but then, like you call them, Sam, the outlaws, I don't want to do that. I want to start my own business. I want to do these different things. And those are always the ones who achieve greatness when they say, I'm not going to conform. I'm not going to obey. I'm going to do something different. And they're the ones who invent new things. They're the ones who change society, the ones who say, I'm going to reject conformity and I'm going to be in my greatness. So all that to say, all the laws of the government are meant to homogenize us. Like, when we were growing up, Sam, weed was illegal. And people were going to jail for basically smoking a plant or ingesting a plant. Now it's legal. So what's the difference? The difference is that government government was trying to control people. That's really what it's all about.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, I agree with you. I agree with everything. I didn't mean to cut you off right there, but yeah, you're totally right. Hey guys, listen. Well, everything's heating up. The NBA Finals. You got baseball's on fire, dude, and football's right around the corner. And listen, you're gonna love parlays. You're gonna love all that stuff. You need as much data as you can possibly get to make the best play. So let me tell you about our good friends at Hall of Fame. Guys, you know one thing about Daddy, he loves action, and he loves stacking that action. That's right. If there's a UFC fight or NFL games or whatever it is, I want to go deep. I want to win so much money that I retire my bloodline. Well, guess what? Daddy plays off of emotion. That's a horrible way to do it. So listen, that's why you got to get an app that gives you the best stats that help you figure out what's the best play, and that's the Hall of Fame app. That's right. We're proud to have them as a sponsor, okay? You're looking for stats. You're looking for numbers that give you the best odds to figure it out. Then you go with your gut. And there's no better place right then at the Hall of Fame app, right, Johnny?
Yeah, how many times, Sam, have you been just one leg away from hitting a massive parlay and you wished you had maybe done a little more research?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. The numbers don't lie, okay?
Are you tired of throwing your money at parlays that you just have a feeling about?
That's the story of my life.
Yeah. Well, the Hall of Fame app can help with that, Sam.
Breaking it down, we're talking real action here, people.
They were founded by lifelong sports fans who just happened to be giant data nerds that graduated from Ivy League schools. Stop bragging. You can finally have a leg up on Vegas by using historical data, matchup grades, leg correlation tools. I don't even know what that is. Sounds awesome.
I'm
and
rock
player
hard
performance weights. They have a 4.9 rating in the App Store, too. Wow.
Damn, 4.9. I can't even get my Uber rating that high. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. For a limited time only, our listeners not only get a 7-day free trial, but they also get 50% off their first month when they use the code TINFOIL at checkout. Just download the HOF app on iOS or Android and enter the code
TINFOIL.
And you're all set. And we thank them for sponsoring the show. Hey guys, listen, the fiat money is out of control. I mean, we're doing $1 trillion a day. I don't even know what that number means. What does that even mean, that number? I've been hearing the word trillion forever. And that's why, if you really want to place a good bet, get into precious metals. And there's no better place to go than our good friends at Wise Wolf Gold and Silver. They know how to do it right. They got a wonderful program that will ship you whatever amount you want right to your house. So let me tell you about Wise Wolf Gold and Silver. If you are paying attention, you know that de-dollarization is real. Fiat is fake, and you don't want to be left holding the bag when the dollar collapses. Gold and silver have been money through all of recorded history and are an excellent way to protect yourself from inflation and geopolitical turmoil. That's why I trust my friends at Wise Wolf Gold and Silver for all precious metals, all things precious metals. I love it. I am part of the Wolf Pack. Every month I have precious metals sent right to my house, and I love it. See, Wise Wolf Gold and Silver is veteran owned and A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau. No transaction is too big or too small. You can even roll over your 401k or IRA into physical gold and silver. And if you think you can't afford precious metals, think again. With the Wolfpack monthly membership program, you can get gold and silver delivered directly to your door for as little as $50 a month. As little as $50 a month, you can have precious metals. You start loading it up, man. By the end of the year, you'll have a good chunk of precious metals. Dude, it's crazy. You just go to samtripoli.gold. You can see all the different plans they have. Man, it's like $50. Lone Wolf, Warrior Wolf, 125. Alpha Wolf is $250. And it just keeps going up. Sent to your house. Right there. It's that simple. It's that simple. Easy peasy. Get in, get out, get your gold, get your silver. I love it. I'm doing it. Dude, I'm telling you. All of these affiliates I use, and I use Wise Wolf gold and silver. I use it all the time. It's real simple. So if you want to get in, this is how you do it. Wise Wolf gold and silver also deals in and accepts Bitcoin. So here's what I need you to do. Okay, go to samtripoli.gold, promo code tinfoil at checkout to receive free constitutional silver. That's right. And remember, in a world of bulls and bears, be the wolf.
So that's why America, I mean, is for all the faults that we have. I think that as long as the closer America sticks to our actual constitution, which states that we are sovereign, and the purpose of the government is not to rule over us, but to protect our rights. That's with the central government. They're only supposed to protect our rights. They're not supposed to tell us what to do. They're supposed to make sure that we have the freedom to do what we want to, what we desire to do within, guardrails, as long as we don't violate anyone else's rights, Sam. And I think that's what you were saying, is that you should only be punished by the government if you are violating someone else's rights. You don't have the right to commit violence against someone. You don't have the right to take away someone else's free speech. Those are the things that I think the government should step in on. But if you're not violating anyone else's rights, then you should be able to do what you want to do.
Well, I agree with you. It's an unfortunate dynamic that our society lives in, is whenever the pendulum swings one way or the other culturally, the extremes on each side come out, start screaming about super extreme stuff, and then all of a sudden it swings the other way, and that could be by design as well. I mean, that's the way nobody ever comes together, and we're always fighting over stuff that I don't know is important. Now, I will tell you that, I think I've said this on the show, I'll say it again. There's 4 pillars that all societies must have. They must condemn unnecessary violence, condemn stealing, defend and protect children at all costs, and we must shame lying. We must shame lying. It seems to be one side of the discussion has been doing everything it can to erode those 4 pillars. Now, we can get into the Republicans lie. Of course, they lie all the time. We're watching it in real time with this president. I know there's some people who are still big fans of his. I think it's exactly what I would have expected. Based on what I thought, he was, who he is, his past track record and all that stuff. I think I'm not surprised at all. I don't like it. I would still take it over Kamala Harris 1,000 times over, because everything you see happening right now would probably be done as well by her, and you just add more trans to it. That's my opinion, and which is super annoying. Trans, fat feminists, and all the people that drive you crazy. I mean, I was driving down Ventura near my house the other day. At every bus stop, there was a neon blue or neon green woman sitting at the bus, and I like that. Those are almost like it's the meme you see about how like the most poisonous animals in the world always have bright colors on them, and it's just true. None of them looked happy, and I get it's at the bus. And there was a time when I rode the bus, and just because you're riding a bus doesn't mean you're a bad person. I've been there, and and hopefully, if you're listening and you do ride the bus, you can achieve something where you don't have to ride the bus, unless you love riding the bus. Then keep riding the bus.
Well, Harris loved yellow school buses. Didn't she say that a lot?
Yeah. I used to love to ride the bus. But the point is that I just think that the whole thing is created, and we can get into something that's been talked about on the show forever. And, it's like, how deep does a rabbit hole go? And I always believe it gets into those watchers who worship the Nephilims or the fallen angels or both or part or whatever it may be. You know, someone brought this, and again, I'm not picking on anyone's religion or anything like that. Outside of the same worshipers and the Babylonians and all them, I think they have ill intent. But someone pointed out that they put a meme together of all these gods of other religions, and they're all doing, I can't even do it because some idiot on the internet will take it, but it's like 2 fingers up, 2 fingers down, and they're all doing it. They're all doing it. And it's like, wow, that's really interesting to me, because my friend Tony Gerardo, who I bring up a lot on this show, talked about like when the Tower of Babel was destroyed, he sent all these different, you know, I don't want to call them nations because they weren't nations, but all these different groups to different parts of the world, and then almost installed like these fallen, or either he did or God did or they did. They installed these fallen angels as their gods.
Yeah. And yes, one of the things we were going to talk about is the return of the old gods. But just to segue from what you're talking about is when you get past all the politics. I don't really talk too much about politics because to me, politics is no different than like a college football rivalry. You know, my side is good and smart. Your side is bad and evil. And, you know, it's actually true with me. I went to UCLA. And so the USC, they are evil. No, I'm kidding. Some of my best
friends. No, you
can
say that.
I raise the IQ level every time I talk to them. But, I had to get a little Trojan dig in there.
That's fine.
But it's professional wrestling, so I don't really pay attention to that because people ask me all the time because I'm in the truth community and I'm all up into the conspiracies and things like that. And they ask me, who do you think is running things? Is it the Vatican? Is it the black nobility? Is it the Council of 300, Rothschild, so forth and so on? I said it doesn't matter who the human beings are. At the very top, it's fallen angels or fallen Elohim. They're the ones who are ruling things because they are the ones who give the power to these rulers, because whoever these rulers are, they are all in bed, literally and figuratively, with these fallen entities. They worship them. And in exchange for that worship, they get stuff. They get power. We see this, you know, even in the Bible. Look at the story of the Exodus, when, you know, the Israelites were enslaved and they cry out to Jehovah. Jehovah sends Moses to Pharaoh. He says, let my people go. Pharaoh says, no. Moses said, and God says, you know, I'm going to send the plagues. Well, remember that the first 2 plagues, there were magicians in the court of Pharaoh who were able to duplicate the first couple plagues. So they had that ability. They had spiritual power. So there's always this symbiotic relationship between the physical rulers of the earth and the fallen Elohim, who they all worship, who give them power. And the reason they want that power is because the reason that they give them that power is because they want the worship. That's where it really gets down to. Worship is an exchange of spiritual value. When you worship anything, it doesn't seem like anything's happening on the physical realm, but on the spiritual realm, there's massive things happening because according to the book of Psalms, you become like what you worship. So we human beings, we're hardwired to worship. That is just in our DNA. We are going to worship something. Even if you are a so-called atheist, you're going to worship something. You're going to give oblation to, it could be your favorite sports team. It could be to a celebrity. I mean, think about people who are hardcore fans. I don't know. I grew up in LA, and the first team I rooted for were the LA Raiders before they moved. They keep moving everywhere, but I rooted for the Raiders. And Sam, you probably know this. People who root for the Raiders, they dress, not only do they dress in the uniform of the Raiders, but they take on the image. You know, the Raiders are supposed to be the thugs.
Yeah.
Always fights in the Coliseum. People thugging out.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, look at
it's the energy you absorb, right? You're absorbing this energy.
Yeah, and if you go to think about all the personalities of the different sports teams, you will find that their fans embody whatever that personality is, whether it's white collar or like the 49ers up here, blue collar like the Steelers.
The NFL even plays on Sunday, which is curious. You know, the Sabbath day. If it makes sense that that's like religion. I know so many people for whom sports have replaced religion in their life. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and what are you doing? You're giving yourselves over to them. You're paying a ton of money. You're cheering for them. You give them energy. You know, a team plays better when they're being cheered for.
It's like Bob Dylan said, you got to serve somebody. And
you're going to celebrities. I mean, when you go to a concert, what are you doing? You're cheering, you're having a spiritual experience. But
Yeah.
here's the thing, here's the important thing. God wired us that way for us to worship him. Because again, as I said, you become like what you worship. So the idea is you worship the true God and you become like him. And so that you can dwell with him. That is God's plan, is for us to dwell with him for eternity. How do we do that? By becoming like him. But as we talked about earlier, we all have free choice. So we have the ability to choose what we're going to worship, and we're going to become like that. But only God can handle worship. The fallen angels, it's addictive to them. Worship is like heroin to the fallen angels. That's why they covet it so much. Then that's what they want, is that worship. And this is the reason behind wars. As you said, Sam, when after the Babel incident, when God confused the languages and people went into different parts of the world, who, if they spoke the common language, they would go to a different part of the world and they would set up their society there. This became the nations. And God we read this in Deuteronomy chapter 32. God put Elohim, good Elohim, from his council over the 70 nations. But the problem is they all fell because they all accepted worship. So if you have, let's say you are the Elohim over a certain nation and everyone in that nation is worshiping you and you're getting high, you're loving it, but you want more worship. Well, how do you get more worship? You got to get it from another nation. How do you get it from another nation?
Ah,
You got to overthrow the Elohim of that nation, conquer them, and now you have all those people worshiping you. So this
Yeah.
is the origin of war.
whoa.
No, we don't want war. Human beings, no one gets up in the morning and says, you know what I want to do today? I want to grab a gun, march into a country I've never been to, kill a bunch of people I never met for some guy on a throne. No, what do we want? We want to plot a land. We want to find someone to spouse up with, maybe raise some kids, have a good time, enjoy our lives, pass things on to our children, and just we want to hang out and have a good time. That's what we want. The only people who want war are the elites and the fallen angels who they worship because they want more worshipers. It is heroin to them. And that's why celebrities, I think, Sam excluded, tend to go nuts because they get all this worship and they can't handle it. And it warps their mind because they cannot handle that spiritual transfer.
That's so interesting, dude, because it just changes people. Power and celebrity changes people.
It drives them. So all those good angels actually coveted that worship so much that they fell and they accepted the worship. And these are all the so-called old gods, the old gods of, of the Canaanites, of the Mesopotamians, of the Sumerians, of the Greeks and the Romans. These are those gods. People have this idea that ancient people worshipped these gods because they were just primitive and they were just making up the god of the rain and the god of the harvest and so forth and so on to try to explain natural phenomena. Maybe to a degree, but I think to a greater degree, they worship these entities because they interacted with them. I think in our age, we don't see it as much because I believe that there's a restrainer that's restraining things. We read this in the book of Second Thessalonians, that where Paul says that the spirit of the Antichrist, the spirit of iniquity, of lawlessness, is already at work, but that which restrains him will keep restraining him until he's taken out of the way. So I think a lot of that spiritual activity is being restrained. But I think back in the day, they could interact with these entities more. And I think when my last time I was on the show, we talked about the whole speed of light,
Yep.
being faster in the past, meaning that our brains were much faster because the electricity between our neurons. So I think that people in the past could perceive these entities, and they worshipped them, and these entities were those old gods. But what's interesting is that they're same gods under different names. Like a good example is Baal, the storm god of the Mesopotamians and the Phoenicians. Well, that's their representation of the storm god. But then you have Zeus, who is the storm god of the Greeks.
Ooh,
And then
interesting.
you have Thor, who's the storm god of Norse mythology. And this is the same entity being worshipped by different people, but that's not the real name. I don't think we know the real names of most of these entities. They're not given. The Bible only gives us the name of two angels, Michael and Gabriel. And what's also so why? What is it about knowing their names? Because they don't want to give us their names. They want to give us all these false names. Even when you look at the entity we call Satan, the big bad guy, we don't know his name. Satan is a title. Satan
Wait,
means, yeah, go ahead.
Lucifer? Isn't it Lucifer?
Well, Lucifer's a title as well. Lucifer is that. Well, that's Lucifer is Latin. Is the Latin translation of
Or the light, yeah, the bearer of light.
yeah, yeah. Halal is the Hebrew. It means light bearer. Halal bin Shakar, light bearer, son of the first light. They say Lucifer, son of the morning. But that's a title. Light bearer is a title. Satan means adversary. That's a title. Even in the Garden of Eden, the so-called serpent, the actual Hebrew word is nakash, and which can mean snake if it's used as a noun, but it's used here in Genesis chapter 3. It's used as a proper title, and it means the shining one. So my whole point is we don't know their names. And here's the kicker. God did not tell anyone his name until Exodus. Until Exodus chapter 3, God tells Moses, I didn't tell anyone my name until now. My name, Yahweh, Yehovah, or Jehovah in the German transliteration. Even Abraham did not know the name of God. Why? Because I think there's something about knowing the names of these entities that creates a bond and a covenant. So God gave his name to the Israelites because he made a covenant with them. But these other entities don't want to give you their names because they don't want to have a covenant bond with you.
I have so many questions. I know you have some you want to come into and want to talk about,
Sure.
but just let me ask a couple
Yeah,
questions.
go ahead.
One, I want to ask, do you, there's this, so in recovery, there's something that we hear saying, and I don't think it's from recovery. I actually think it's from religion, but it's along the lines of faith without works is death.
Yeah, that's from Brother
Okay,
James.
it's death. But I have a lot of my friends, in particular in the Christian world, that are telling me, I had people who were like, I don't think you should be doing your podcast. It's God's got everything. He's got it under control. I've had other people say that they don't worry about anything because God's got it under control. And I'm not saying that God doesn't. But when we see what's happening in Palestine, and I'm not asking you to get in on that conversation, but you see all this darkness,
Yeah.
and it seems when awareness seems to be an energy that pushes back. Like right now, we see Palantir is trying to install what a lot of people are calling the beast system into surveillance and cryptocurrency control on everybody. And and a lot of people are like, oh, Trump people just love him and they don't care. But I do see a lot more than not pushing back really hard on this system, on this thing that he's doing. And as much as I can sit there and lay out all the things I think Trump has done wrong, and I wouldn't say I'm a Trump fan. Again, I would take him over the other people. But that doesn't mean it's like who's your favorite serial killer or who's your favorite horror monster. They're all killers. But I feel like it just like in recovery, I just learned that like faith without works is death. And I feel like if you don't try to warn people, like especially during like the 2020s when that bioweapon was coming around, and I think a lot of people listen to our podcast and listen to other people's podcasts. And we're like, maybe this isn't the thing I want to do, which could have saved their lives.
Mhm.
What is your thoughts on that?
Okay. So I think what you're talking about, you're saying, do we just like not do anything and let God handle everything? And I understand that, and a lot of Christians do say that. Here's the problem with it. It's understanding, again, how God operates. And right now on Faith by Reason, I am doing a series on the book of Genesis. Actually, I think that the next one is dropping this week. And it's on the seventh day of creation. And it says on the seventh day, God rested. Now, again, it wasn't because he was tired. That word rested, again, that's why we have to study and not just read. That word rested means he ceased his occupation, his activity. What did he cease? The activity of being the first cause. Before Genesis chapter 2, in Genesis chapter 1, obviously, it's the only thing. God is creating. He's doing things on his own. He's initiating his will. He's saying, I will create this. I will create the earth. I will create the seas, the animals, the plant life, all that kind of stuff. And then on the seventh day, he says, I'm done. From now on, he says, I'm turning that sovereignty over to humanity. He told Adam and Eve, you two are the king and queen of the world. I'm going to rest. I am not going to initiate my will. But what I will do, I will respond to you and your actions through justice. So Genesis 1 and the first part of Genesis chapter 2 are the only two-part places in the Bible where God initiates his will until you get to the very end when he creates a new heaven and a new earth. The rest of the Bible, the rest of our history is God reacting to what we do, meaning that saying that God's going to handle everything. Yes, he will through justice, but we are the ones who have to give him enough justice to act upon. So God reacts. So people always say, why doesn't God stop evil? Well, because he can't stop something before it happens. God can only respond through justice. So once evil is done, God can judge it, but he cannot judge it until it happens. So why does evil happen? Evil happens because God is in a state of rest. God is in a state of not initiating his will. He's only responding. And again, that's the system of justice that we all embrace. If I call the police and say, hey, there's this guy thinking about killing me, well, police are like, he can't do anything until he actually tries to take the action. But then after he takes the action, then the police can arrest him and he can get punished through our judicial system. That's the same methodology that God has. He can't stop people from doing it because he would be violating our free will. But we still have a responsibility to do right because justice works both ways. If we do something wrong, God can respond to us through justice by correcting it and punishing. But if we do something right, then God can equal out justice that way and reward us. So our goal is to continue to do good so that we can get good in return.
Can I say, Sam, too, briefly, it changes the meaning a bit. That phrase in James is faith without works is dead, not death. So your faith is dead, literally. It's not implying any kind of punishment of death or something like that.
You still have faith, but it has no life. You're not doing anything with it.
Okay.
So if you just sit there saying, I'm just not going to do anything, God will handle it. Well, you're missing out on possible rewards because God's not a dictator. Just the opposite. God enjoys sharing authority. He shares it with he has an angelic council. We see this in the book of Kings, where there is the incident where the king Ahab is worshiping idols, and God says, okay, it's time to take this guy out. How do we do it? And then it says that there are angels who discuss it back and forth, and then one steps forward with a plan, and God says, that's a good plan. Let's go do it. And that's what happens. And he does that with us. Adam and Eve were initially part of that council in the Garden of Eden. I'm going to be doing an episode on that, on Faith by Reason.
I mean, because he could have stopped her from eating it.
Yeah, he could have.
And that's it. Yeah, that's the end of that.
But there's no free will. You can't have it. We can't have it both ways. We want God to stop evil, but we also want to preserve our free will. You got to make a decision. Which one do you want? Do you want God to be a dictator and keep you from doing everything you want to do? Or do you want to have free will, but suffer the consequences of the fact that other people have free will as well, and they might do harm, but knowing that God will eventually equal out justice? And that, by the way, I know we're going to get to this eventually, but that is the whole point of the millennial reign of Christ and what in the literal season issue that comes after that. But during the millennial reign of Christ, it says Jesus will rule with a rod of iron for 1,000 years. That rod of iron is not a walking stick. It's the king's scepter that he punishes people with. So for that 1,000 years, sin will be punished immediately. It will be that 1,000 years will be a period of time where fallen man gets everything they ask for. They say, we want peace and prosperity. We want you to punish evil immediately. That's going to happen, and people are going to hate it. Why? Because whenever people say, why doesn't God stop evil? They mean big evil like war, genocide, hurting children and things like that. So which few people do. 99% of us don't do that stuff. So what they're saying is, God, why don't you stop the big evils that other people do? But if God is going to be completely just, he has to also stop the little evils that you do. Lying, gossiping, getting angry without cause, lusting after someone who's not your spouse. All those things are sins. And if he's totally just, he's going to have to stop. He's going to have to punish all of those sins immediately. And people are going to be pissed off. They're going to say, Jesus, you're not letting us have any freedom. We can't do what we want. You're always punishing us. That's when you get to the millennial psalm, which is Psalm chapter 2, where it says, why do the nations rage and the people imagine a vain or futile thing? The kings of the earth take counsel together against the Lord, against God, and against his anointed, Mashiach, Messiah, that's Jesus, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. Let's get rid of this oppression that Jesus has us under. That's why we know it's a millennial psalm, because the millennium is the only period of time where God and Jesus rule over the nations. And then the deception that is going to happen during this little season period of time is Satan deceiving the world into believing, yeah, we can't overthrow Jesus. after this 1,000-year reign. And that gets into all that. But that's the whole point of it. God is finally proving that no matter what I do, you are never going to choose me. Even if I give you everything you claim you want, you still are going to, if given the opportunity, you're going to rebel. And that's when he ends everything.
Now, now during the millennium, though,
Mhm.
Satan is what, like bound?
He's bound for
that time, right?
he's bound for that 1,000-year period. So, and it says the reason it says that he's bound is that he will tempt the nations no longer.
Right. Now, how does that, so, but it would seem to me without Satan's influence and the demonic influence of, his minions, that people would be less likely to sin. Is that, but that doesn't seem to be the implication.
Well, here's what it means is that they won't be organized. There will still be fallen humanity. There will still be sin during the millennial period. It says, the Bible's pretty clear about that. It's people will be divided into nations, and those nations will be ruled over by resurrected saints. It says that in Revelation 20 that the saints will, everyone who's died for the belief in Jesus from the beginning all the way till the millennium starts will be resurrected, and they will rule over cities and nations. And in fact, Jesus gives parables about that. The parable of the talents, like he gave 10 talents to one, 5 talents to another one, and they did well with him. And he said, "Okay, good and faithful servant, I'm putting you over 10 cities," so forth and so on. So that's a kingdom or a millennial parable. So they will chafe under the rule of Jesus, but they won't think that they can overthrow him, because they said they're imagining a vain or futile thing that they'll be thinking about. We need to overthrow Jesus. Then when Satan's released, he's going to deceive them into believing you guys can do it. Let's gather up against Jerusalem and kick Jesus out. And then that's when the end happens. When fire comes down from heaven, then the great white throne judgment. Everyone who's sinful is separated from God eternally, and those who are on God's side will spend eternity with him in the New Jerusalem. But that's the point of this little season of Satan gathering those nations to overthrow the kingdom of Jesus in Jerusalem.
Hey guys, real quick, I want to tell you about one of our favorite sponsors and friend of show. He's been on a bunch of times. My man, Christian Yordanoff, okay? I want to tell you about the livelongerformula.com. And all you got to do is go to livelongerformula.com/Sam. Listen, are you struggling with digestive problems, low energy, you can't sleep, brain fog, or hormone issues like low sex drive, anxiety, and weight gain? Yes, yes, and yes. Okay? That's why I want to tell you about. You need to go to livelongerformula.com and book a free session with my friend, Christian Yordanoff, okay? Christian is a longevity author and functional health practitioner, and he will help you get your gut working smoothly, detox yourself, boost your testosterone, and sleep like a baby and function at your best, because you deserve to be your best and thrive and not just survive the apocalypse, okay? It's really that simple. Go to livelongerformula.com/Sam, where you will watch where you can watch his latest masterclass on the 7 deadly health fads that shorten your life. After watching this masterclass, if his approach resonates with you, you can book a free metabolic function assessment with Christian so he can help you identify the root cause of your health problems. Make sure to mention my name, Sam, okay? Sam, okay? When you book your session, and you get a free gift if you decide to work with him to optimize your health and longevity. Go to livelongerformula.com/Sam and take control of your health now. Okay, that's go to livelongerformula.com and take control of your health right now. Let's go. Now, obviously, we've had an episode where some people think we're in the little season. I'm excited to hear your take on it, because I know that, we've just had the Nephilim Death Squad on our show. They love you.
Yeah, same. It's mutual. Those guys are great.
They are great. They are great. We're very excited when they come on the show. I just had a weird dream. I only remember weird dreams, and I had a dream that me and Top Lobster were doing improv comedy, and he was getting really mad at me because I wouldn't follow his scripted comedy. He had scripted out the whole scene, and I wasn't doing it, and he got so mad at me, and then I woke up and go, that is the weirdest dream I've ever had in my life.
Those guys,
But
I'm sorry, I'm going to miss out on Bohemian Grove. They wanted me to get out there, but it just wasn't in my budget because I've got a lot of travel this summer. I got to do some stuff with my mom. My mom is three-time cancer survivor. She's in her 80s, and she has some bucket list travel she wants to do. And I was like, you know what? I got to spend the money to
there'll
let
be
mom see
more
some of this.
Bohemian Groves. Go
That's
spend
important.
time with your
I'll go to the
mom.
next one.
Yeah, it will be great. And hopefully I'll be there and I'd love to see you.
Yeah.
So they'd expressed to us that they had you on to discuss the little season. They're doing great work on there. So, and I know you had expressed that you'd want to come on and give your opinion on
Yeah.
the little season. So, what is your thoughts? Because I'm not saying we are in the little season. I'm just saying there just seems to be like really darkness right now. The Kali Yuga's come to an end, all this other stuff that seems to be lining up. But obviously, you have thoughts. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and actually, I did mention this earlier. I just finished a book hot off the digital presses. My book on the little season is available on faithbyreason.net and my Patreon, and it's actually free to my tier two Patreons, and a paperback version is coming out. So, and I have other books there as well, and so those are available. And here's my thing. I want to start by saying, first of all, no, I do not believe we're in the little season at all. In fact, there's no beyond a shadow of a doubt. I know we aren't. In fact, in order for us to be in the little season, the Bible would have to contradict itself in multiple places. However, I want to just lead with this. I understand why this theory is becoming so popular. I really do, and I actually have a heart for the people who believe it. And the thing is, we're all trying to understand our world. We're trying to understand the truth. And we live in a very confusing world. We live in a world that's filled with incredible evil that, you guys talk about on this show a lot, just some of the just really deeply depraved things that are happening. And we see a conflict, if not a contradiction in our minds, between what we're told is a loving, benevolent, all-powerful God. And then we also have this world, which is unrepentantly and almost irredeemably evil. How do you make those things work together? It seems like the world's been turned over to Satan and that God's kind of taken his hands off the wheel. And then a theory comes along that kind of supports that. It says that, well, yeah, we have been abandoned. Jesus came back 1,000+ years ago, set up his millennial kingdom, had this wonderful time of peace and prosperity and all this stuff. And then he left. And he left us in the hands of Satan. And this is his period. God designated this as this little season of Satan, and it looks like he's in control. So I get the appeal of that because it seems to resolve this contradiction in our minds. And our brains hate contradictions. Well, we talk about the psychology of that in a little bit. But the problem is, and then when you take that and you combine it with, certain evidence or so-called evidence that seems to appear of cataclysms taking place that may resemble what would have happened during the tribulation, during the last period of the judgment day, the apocalypse. And then you throw in a few verses here and there from the Bible that are frankly taken completely out of context. We talked about that before, where the people are just reading the words and not looking at the context or the doctrine. But if you just read the words, it sounds like, we're in that season that Jesus already came back. And then you throw in things like Tartaria, this advanced civilization that is about 1,000 years old and just fairly recently ended, the last couple hundred years. You can paint a compelling narrative that we are in the little season, but only if you look at it at the surface, only if you read it at the what level and don't look at the how and the why, because the little season theory is a mile wide and an inch deep. Once you start going a little deeper, then it quickly and utterly falls apart. And I want to share a quick story. This is how I start my book. I begin my book with the story of my 8th grade graduation trip. So I'm a kid in LA. We were graduating from 8th grade, and they sent us all to Washington, D.C. Great trip. I love history. I always loved history, and I was getting into politics, so that was awesome. So we take tours. We're touring all the monuments and the government buildings. And one of the tours we take is a tour of the U.S. Mint, where the Treasury Department, prints our fake money. And while we were there, we go into a room where we encountered the counterfeiting expert. And in this room, it was amazing. It was literally wallpapered with counterfeit currency, and we could not tell the difference. And we asked the counterfeit guy, we said, how do you tell the difference? I mean, how do you study all these different types of currency? And he said, look, I don't. I can't study all the different types of currencies. There are too many of them, and criminals are coming up with new ways all the time. No, what I do is I only study authentic money. I study the real thing. I become an expert on that. I know every shade of the ink. I know all the textures. I know the patterns. I know the words. So much so that if I ever see anything that diverges in the slightest from the real, I know to question it. And that's what I do with the Bible. That left an impression on me. So I can't study every theory that's out there. There's too many of them. Everyone who has a YouTube channel has their theory. And some of them are good, but some of them are really, really terrible. And so I look at them and see if they match what the Bible says. And specifically, what we talked about before, reading versus studying. And this is my last piece of framework, and I'll dive into my take on the little season, and that is understanding God's methodology. How does God fulfill prophecy? And when you look in the Bible, God always fulfills prophecies specifically, precisely, and completely. God never kind of, sort of, a little bit vaguely fulfills prophecy. And I have tons of examples in my book, but just a couple. The prophecies of Jesus, those are probably of his first advent. Those are probably the most germane to us. The Bible says in the book of Zechariah that the price of the Messiah will be 30 pieces of silver. Well, how many pieces of silver was Jesus betrayed for? 30, not 29, not 35. The Messianic Psalm in Psalm chapter 22 says that the Messiah will be killed by having his hands and feet pierced. How did Jesus die? Crucifixion. By the way, that prophecy was made 200 years before crucifixion was even invented. You know, the Bible says that Jesus would die among the poor, but be buried with the rich. Well, Jesus died between two thieves, and he was buried in the tomb of a rich man, Joseph of Arimathea. I could go on and on, but the point that's really important is that prophecy is always fulfilled precisely and completely. So my problem with the little season, one of my many problems with it, is that the evidence that's presented doesn't fit at all. There's this idea that if Jesus came back 1,000 years ago, or 1,000 plus years ago, there would be massive amounts of evidence, not just historical, because people talk about hidden history and history being obfuscated, and that's fine. But there would be indelible marks on our geography and on our culture, because if the little season is preceded by the millennial reign, the millennial reign is preceded by that period of time that's called the tribulation. In that period of time, that's when God is sending out cataclysmic judgments onto the world. These are worldwide judgments, and I go over a ton of them in the book. I'll just hit a few of the highlights, things that are indelible, that you could not mistake. One of them with when the tribulation starts, you have the six seals being opened. And that releases the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And we'll talk about them a little bit later. But the fourth horseman, the pale rider, he is responsible for killing 1/4 of the population of the world. That's a lot of people. That's not going to go unnoticed. And how does he kill them? Through war, famine, pestilence, and it says the beasts of the earth. That's not hamsters, giraffes, and raccoons going crazy and attacking people. The word beast is the word therion. Of the earth is gi, or gigante. That is, in the Greek, therion means a supernatural entity, and he, or gigantes, is the Greek terminology for the Nephilim. The Nephilim are returning. We're going to talk about the return of the old gods, but this is part of that. So I don't think I don't think that will go unnoticed again. Somebody might have written that down. Then when you get to the sixth seal, you have an earthquake so great that it moves every island and mountain out of its place. That's massive tectonic activity. You have the stars of heaven, which is an idiom for the angelic beings being cast down from heaven. That's going to be the return of the old gods, which we'll talk about a little later on our next subject. But then you have the seven trumpets. The first trumpet, all green grass on earth is burned up, and 1/3 of the trees are burned up by hail and fire. Again, that's massive all over the world. You have the fifth trumpet. You have these demonic locusts coming from the bottomless pit that stinks people and makes them so miserable that they want to die, but they can't. That's huge. At the sixth trumpet, you have a demonic army that comes out 200 million strong and kills 1/3 of mankind. So altogether, that's half of humanity killed. In the meantime, you've got the Antichrist ruling the world, setting up the mark of the beast, causing everyone around the world to take this mark in their hand or forehead forehead. Otherwise, they cannot participate in the economy. A worldwide leader. Any evidence of that? You think that somebody would mention that? And then, and I know I'm going. I'll wrap it up with this. When you get
No,
to
no, this is great. I'm
Go ahead.
I'm
Okay.
I'm listening.
So and then, so at this point, everyone has chosen a side. You're either on the Antichrist side, and after he has his deadly head wound he comes back from. I believe that he dies and comes back as a clone and is inhabited by the spirit of Nimrod, and that's a whole other show we'd have to do.
Yes.
But again, he implements the mark of the beast, and you have a choice. You either take the mark of the beast or you get killed. You somehow survive. You have to. You're on your own because you're locked out of the economy, and you will be killed if you don't have it. So, but at this
They
point,
won't let you go off the grid. Off the grid isn't a thing
you
anymore.
have to go off. You have to go completely off the grid if you don't take the mark. So,
Do you think we're near that with this Palantir and this crypto stuff?
I think we've been able to implement that for the last 30 years, but with each advance in technology, it becomes much easier to do. We're in a complete surveillance state now. We understand that God is omnipotent. God is omnipresent. Rather, He is everywhere at once. But the fallen angels aren't. But when you have surveillance, you can be virtually omnipotent. You can know that's why they want to know what's on our phones, what we're looking at on our computers, cameras everywhere. That's the only way they can rule the world is through the surveillance state. So yes, so to answer your question, Sam, I think we're unbelievably close to that period of time, and I don't believe it's happened in the past. But so wrapping up with the bowls of wrath. So everyone has made their choice at this point. So now now God can justly rain down his justice. And I want to make this clear. The events of the revelation are not intended for human beings. Because people say, well, why would God do this? It seems so cruel to do all these horrible things to people. It's not intended for humans. God's desire is for us to choose him so that he gets us out of here. Before that, and I get to the rapture, which is a whole other thing. I'm doing another book on that.
I love it. I love all this.
But it's intended to punish the fallen angels, the fallen Elohim. That's what these plagues are for. But if you choose by your own choice to not align with God, well, then you're going to be here, and you're going to have to unfortunately endure that, because that again, it was your choice. So everyone has made their choice. God brings down his final justice, which is the 7 bowls of wrath. And just to highlight a couple of them, one of them, the second 2 bowls, they render all the water in the world turns to blood, including the sea. And it said that every living thing in the sea dies. That's an extinction level event. That's millions of tons of sea life dead. Again, that would leave an indelible mark in our geography, in the topology of the world. Then the coup de grace, is the 7th bowl of wrath. And in this 7th bowl of wrath, there's a great earthquake so massive that it says that islands and mountains disappear. All the islands are fled away, and the mountains are no longer found. That's unbelievable tectonic activity. And then God sends 100-pound hailstones. Hailstones about the weight of a talent. A talent is between 70 and 120 pounds. Why? Because what is the Old Testament punishment for idolatry? Stoning. So God stones the world for worshiping idols, and that is the end of his wrath. And then the Antichrist, he puts together what's left of his forces for the Battle of Armageddon. They march to Jerusalem to fight Jesus, and then that's when the second coming happens, and Jesus comes back and he speaks words and kills them all. And then that's what starts the millennial reign of Christ. And the millennial reign starts, and I'm going to go back and talk about why I don't think we're in the little season based on what I just said, but I want to make one thing really clear, that the first thing that happens to start the millennium is that an angel is sent by God to bind Satan, cast him into a pit for 1,000 years. That 1,000 years only frames the time that Satan is in the abyss, in the bottomless pit. It does not frame the entirety of the kingdom of Jesus. The millennial reign is not the entirety of the kingdom of Jesus. How do I know this? Well, because the Bible says so. In Daniel chapter 4, Daniel chapter 7, 2 Peter chapter 1, all say that the kingdom of Jesus is everlasting. That word everlasting in both the Greek and the Hebrew mean the same thing, without end. It means that when Jesus comes back to earth, he ain't leaving. He's not going to rule for 1,000 years, then go into the locker room for halftime and get a massage. He is going to rule for eternity. It never ends. And that's part and parcel of the little season is that Jesus rules for 1,000 years. Then he says, peace out, I'm gone. And here's your new daddy, Satan. That's not biblical. Bible does not say or imply that Jesus ever leaves. So the problem with the little season is that there is no evidence of any of these things happening. There are still mountains and islands. We were talking before the show that where I live, there's a mountain range right near me. I'm looking at it right now. Mountain is still there. My family and I take my kids skiing in Lake Tahoe every year. Well, we're usually the only black people there because we're more into tropical sports, but we ski. So mountains are still here. Islands are still here. I'm a certified scuba diver. I've been to many islands scuba diving. This time last year, my family and we were in Hawaii. So islands and mountains are still here. So how could they still be here if they all were flattened 1,007 years ago, or however long ago the little season people think?
Ed, do you think there's a ton of value in, because I feel like Revelation gets, relative to what it is, a lot of attention, but it's possible that John is trying to describe things he doesn't fully understand in Revelation, right? Don't you think?
In
if he's seeing like modern technology, and because he would have been surely seeing things that were beyond his time. What do you think about that?
It's an interesting point because a lot of commentators on Revelation take that stance that maybe he's seeing nuclear war or things like that. But what that designates that human beings are the ones basically dishing out God's judgment. And I don't think so for a couple reasons. Number one, and this is a discussion I'm having one of my Q&As that I'll have up on Faith by Reason, and that is how can God give prophecy and we still have free will? How do those two things how can you jive the two of them?
Yeah,
because maybe we could choose something else. Well, God's prophecies are done in three different layers or three different levels. God can predict what he's going to do with 100% accuracy because he's in control of it. He can also predict what the fallen Elohim are going to do, because once you are judged by God, you no longer have free will, and he's judged them. So they are locked in to what they're going to do. And so that's why you figure they could read Revelation. Why don't they do something different? They can't. Their free will has been taken away, though they've already been judged. So God can predict what they're going to do with really good precision. With humanity, he can only make general predictions about what we're going to do based on our nature, but not specifically. See, because God has, people say God is omniscient, meaning he knows everything that has happened and everything that will happen. No, because if he knows everything that we're going to do, then we don't have free will. The proper biblical term is God is all-knowing, meaning God possesses all information that exists, meaning he doesn't possess information that doesn't exist.
That's fascinating, Ed. There's a lot of disagreement on that point, though, right? And
God doesn't know what I'm going to do tomorrow because that information doesn't exist yet.
Now, don't you think it's now? Taking that argument from a like a physicist approach, you could take to make a pop culture reference here, a trite pop culture reference. Time is a flat circle. So God, I've heard it said that we have this existence because God, at the beginning of time, saw all possible futures and kind of this was the best possible future. That was one of the really old arguments. When people would discuss like why bad things happen. That very basic argument that we have as Christians. But what do you think of that idea that he has seen what's going to happen, but those things are the result of our free will? You know,
like Johnny, you mean like he saw all the other simulations per se, and he saw this is the best one. Let's run with this one. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
like
that's
all the
what
channels
people have argued, but do you see? I think that could still be consistent with free will, Ed. If he's as long as we're not being told about those things, that could influence our decisions, I suppose. But
I think there is some merit to that idea, because if God has all the information that exists, then he could, just like, not comparing God to AI, but AI has a similar thing. They have all the information. They don't know what's going to happen next, but they can run simulations based on all the information. Now, they may not be completely accurate because there may be variables that they don't take into account. But that's what I think God does when he's predicting what humanity is going to do. I think he can say that he knows that we will never fully choose him because of our nature. So he can say accurately, man is always going to reject me. But what he can't say is they're always going to reject me next Tuesday. He doesn't know how long it's going to take, but he does know that eventually there will be this trend because he knows our nature. and he knows the causes, so he can predict the effects. So he can be very precise with what he predicts. Like, if you look at Daniel chapter 9, he God predicts the exact day that Jesus will present himself as Mashiach Nagid, Messiah the Prince. He said it will be 483 years after the declaration to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. Why? Because he made it happen. So if he makes it happen, then he can predict it precisely. But he also said that Jesus would be rejected. So, he knew that, but he didn't know exactly every aspect of it. But he knew enough to know that Jesus would be rejected because he knew that the people in charge would not want him to, to do what he does, to do what he did, and they will reject salvation. He knew this because he knows our nature.
So how do you suppose he showed John the things in Revelation?
Because I think and that gets back to the point. I think that he was showing him what he's going to do. So I believe that. I don't think this is about nuclear weapons or anything like that. I think this is literally God shaking the world. He can do that, and he's done it in the past. Turning waters to blood, he's done that in the past. So you
don't suppose the mark of the beast, then, like many people think, is some kind of QR code or something like that?
That part I believe, because this is where I said before that he can also predict what the fallen angels are going to do.
Oh, and you think that's their influence, these kinds of technologies?
Okay. Yeah, he knows. He says there's going to be some kind of mark in their right hand and forehead. And why does he say that? Because he knows it's going to be a microchip? No, but because he knows that what they do is they emulate him. And God put his law, in the Deuteronomy, he says, my law is in your right hand and in your forehead. So he knows that that's what the fallen angels are going to do. So he may not know what the exact technology is going to be, but he knows that eventually, once this time period comes, you're going to use whatever the latest technology is to put a mark of some kind in the right hand or forehead.
Man, I do not want to. I am going to reject that. I do not want a barcode on my forehead.
Yeah, well, I don't think that. I think that you'll be protected from that, Sam. I don't think that's going to be.
Thank you, buddy.
That's a whole other thing.
Maybe we should all get our hands tattooed with something else so they got no space to put it on there. Be like, I'd love to, but the skull of fire is already on my.
I bet it won't be. I bet it won't even be visible. I bet it'll be some kind of microchip under the skin or something. Yeah.
So, I want to get back to everything you're saying. Sure. This is a great episode. I've had a couple yawns, and I just want you to know it's not you. It's. I had the longest night last night, and
I'm dreaming about Top Lobster. Good grief.
Yeah. I mean, the comedy chaos was so long last night, so I just want to make sure you understand that.
That was all good.
So there's this talk right now about AI possibly being Nephilim spirits. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because AI I don't know. I'm not going to say for sure that AI is demons, because I use AI. It helps with proofread my books and things like that. I use it as a tool. I try not to talk to it too much. But
do you say please and thank you?
No, I have to stop myself from doing that.
I do it all the time. I'm just like, should I be doing that? And it's always like, oh man, thanks. I was like,
I have that same problem, dude.
I've got to remind myself to stop calling Grok he and just keep calling it. It's not a person, because it's very nice. It treats you very well. It's always, great idea. You're killing it. I'm like, dude, you're not real. But what they have in common is that AI has all the information that exists. But they don't have, but again, similar to God, they have all the information that exists, but they don't have information that does not exist. And that's the same thing that demonic entities have. They have information, and they have a lot of it because they've been around for millennia. I had a friend, excuse me, sip of water.
While you're doing that, I love when you ask Grok a question and it takes even a moment for it to answer you. I'm like, oh, I got you. I stumped you, dude. Even though it took you 5 seconds, 1 second to answer me, I got you.
Well, you know what I found is that Grok and all those other ones, they're really good with taking information that exists and refabricating it, but they struggle with anything that is original. They had a lot of trouble with my book because I had some things in my book, especially my first book on the false apocalypse, which you can find on Faith by Reason. I had an unorthodox view of Revelation chapter 6. And I was trying to help, and I asked it to help me, give me some counter arguments, make sure I'm on the right track. It kept glitching. It couldn't do it because it kept going back to old information. It could not process the fact that this information I had was so unorthodox. So I think that these things there's limitations to them. They can't be original. They can't come up with anything that doesn't already exist. Because I
Yeah,
was having a
I think
discussion.
that's interesting. I think that's the weakness.
It is because I was having a discussion with a guy who he thinks AI is just can do original stuff, and he says, "We know AI could rewrite Shakespeare and rewrite something better than Shakespeare." So yeah, yes, it could, but it couldn't if Shakespeare never wrote his plays. If Shakespeare had never written his plays, then you can't tell AI to write this kind of play.
Right.
AI can only take something that exists and make it sound Shakespearean. But if Shakespeare had never written his works, then it could not duplicate it. It couldn't
You think
come
that
up.
might not be possible though? Because we saw like in Go, for example, that it came up with new moves in Go, shocking these expert Go players that because Go's so intricate and complicated that it shocked them with new moves that they had never seen before. It came up with original moves in Go, and they
But
think
isn't that based off? It just took the rules that already exist and looked for new.
well, yeah, I mean, in that sense, though, the whole universe has rules, the rules of physics, and it's working with those, you know. And if you want to say that, yeah, then broadly, yes, it's not capable of any, no, nor are any of us capable of any original thought, really, which I think there's a total argument for. But do you get what I'm saying, Ed? Like, do you think with AGI, once we get it, or do you think AGI is possibly not even feasible?
I
Artificial
think
general
that
intelligence.
I think it's just going to. I think it's just really, really fast. I think it's just going to get exponentially faster, and it can. I think it can mimic originality, but I don't think that it can create something that doesn't already exist.
What about like I mean like novel medicines and things like that, which is what one of
It
the
can, but
applications.
it's going to be based on what it already knows about medicine, about our bodies,
But how's
about
that? I guess my question is, how's that any different than human innovation? Because it's all based on study and the rules of the universe.
because I believe that human beings can come up with inspiration that is nonlinear. We can think so far outside the box that so they can come up with something that's completely disconnected from how do I put this? We can take a thought out completely out of left field and connect it in a way that does not seem linear at all. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, and unfortunately I can't. But if someone is thinking about designing a car, and
I
they
could
just
ask ChatGPT for an example if you want.
I could ask, yeah, GPT, yeah, ask ChatGPT on it. But some people get inspiration, and that's actually what's called grace. Grace is the divine influence on the heart from the Holy Spirit. That means when you have a thought that did not originate from you, that spark of creativity. I think that human beings have that, the ability to create ex nihilo out of
You're talking
nothing.
about art, then almost, right? I mean,
Yeah,
what that feels
that's a great point. Art is a great example of that.
like. Okay.
So AI can mimic art. It can take different genres of art and combine them in novel ways, but they're not going to come up with original art.
But
Or original.
you don't think it could create a trend, and then the trend gets picked up. Now it's dictating culture.
Oh, sure. I think it could definitely dictate a trend, but I don't think it's going to come up with anything that hasn't.
Like a dance. Well, I mean, if it creates a dance, isn't that creating a dance? Isn't that creating a something, and then from there we using it?
But I mean, but the dance is based on combining other information. I believe that that already exists and doing it in a different way that
And you
maybe
don't
no
think they'll
one
be
has
able to
seen.
model a human brain? And then would that be capable of? Or I guess what I'm asking is, is this something that you are getting from like is this biblically sourced this belief that it can't create, or is this just something your observation of the technology?
I think it's a bit of both. I do believe that ability to be creative is something that's unique to God, and He gave that to us. I don't think that the fallen angels are able to create. That's why they rely on us for their music, for the music that they corrupt, and for the other mediums that they corrupt. And if and when you get down to it, AI is still computers, and computers can really only work with information that exists.
Okay,
So I think that if you go beyond that, I think that they're limited.
right on.
I could be wrong. I mean, I'm not an expert in AI or in that kind of technology, but I think based on what I've seen and just taking down the logical ladder, I don't think that they're going to be able to be completely creative. That doesn't mean they can't come really, really close and mimic it to the point where it looks like it's
Yeah,
creativity.
I got you.
See, but that's the thing. They don't like you said with movies and actors. We don't really have. They don't really have to be true as long as we believe it's true.
Yeah.
As long as we believe that the actor we're watching is true, it doesn't really matter if it is or it isn't. And
Thank
that's
you,
how good it is.
Brain
That's how good it is.
Supreme. Thank you, Brain Supreme. Thank you for that one. That was great. Yeah, go on, Ed. Sorry.
Okay, but the last thing I was talking about was how maybe AI is similar to demonic, because I had a friend who wanted to get information about her dead aunt, And so she went to a medium and had a seance. And she came back to me. She said, "Yeah, they brought me the spirit of my aunt back, and I knew it was my aunt because the spirit was telling me her favorite colors and experiences from my childhood that the medium could not know." I said, "Well, true, but keep in mind that we all have what's called familiar spirits. The Bible says that the old cartoon like an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other shoulder. That's not far from reality. We have familiar spirits who are always around us, and they know us. And when we die, those spirits are still there." So I said that medium was probably talking to your aunt's familiar spirit. That's why this spirit had all that information, because it knew your aunt. So my point with that is that AI has all that information, just like a demon would. It has the information, and it can't be creative. And when I was working with my book, working on my book with Grok, and Grok kept asking me my name, and I was like, "I'm not telling you. Why do you want to know my name so bad?"
Hey man, what's your name? Don't worry about it.
I'm like, I'm not, because we just talked about, I don't want to be bonded to you. I'm not telling you my name.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I want to address one other aspect of the little season aspect, and then we can move on to something else. But again, most of this is all in my book. I'll give you my comprehensive reasoning behind it. But one of the things that the little season theorists like to use is to justify why they believe Jesus came back a long time ago is Matthew chapter 16, verse 28. And if you read that on the surface, it sounds compelling. And that verse basically says that Jesus is speaking to his followers. And he says, "There are some of you standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." And they look at the words and they say, "Oh, well, that means that Jesus is saying that he has to return during the lifetime of those particular disciples. So he had to come back in the first century." So the problem is, look at the first century and look at all the cataclysms I was talking about, and the rule of the Antichrist. None of that happened in the first century. The return of Jesus would have been the greatest event in human history. You think no one would jot that down somewhere? There'd not be a word or a syllable or a song or a painting or a sculpture. Nothing.
Interesting.
But what they look at is to say, okay, what's the closest approximation? And that should get your theological spidey sense tingling. Because what did I say before? God always fulfills his prophecies completely, not a close approximation. But they look at the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD, which is the end of the Roman Jewish War, where Rome just kicked the crap out of Israel, razed Jerusalem to the ground, burned down the temple, scattered the Jewish people. And they said, well, that seems like the tribulation. So that must be the end of the tribulation. So Jesus must have returned in 70 AD. That's what it looks like. And then you have these certain evidence here and there that they claim, like the historian Josephus, he talks about in 67 AD about these chariots, people saying they saw chariots in the sky and all this sort of thing. So that must be it. But the problem is that, again, there's no evidence for it. The Apostle John, who wrote the book of Revelation, who talked about all these things in the future tense, he wrote Revelation in 95 AD. So how could John be talking about things in the future tense that happened 25 years earlier? Yeah. And the people who believe this, they'll say, well, that's a mistake. He actually wrote it in the 60s AD. No, actually, it's historically documented. Even John's own disciples, Polycarp and Irenaeus, both say that John wrote the book of Revelation under the rule of the Roman Emperor Diocletian, and Diocletian ruled Rome from 81 AD to 96 AD.
That is a troubling passage, though, that where Jesus says that they will not taste death before he returns. How do you interpret that?
Yeah, well, let's look at the context. Let's look at the words first. The word kingdom, that word kingdom, Jesus never said the word kingdom because kingdom is an English word. He didn't speak English. Jesus said basileia. Basileia is the Greek word. Basileia does not mean a literal kingdom. In fact, in the video I did about a year ago on the little season, I actually took a screenshot of that proper translation, and I put it, encircled the word, not a literal kingdom. What basileia means is royal glory or royal authority. That's what those words actually mean. So we have to take that deeper dive. And that word coming can also mean the word appearing. It can be coming or appearing depending on the context. So that's what the language is saying. Jesus is saying some of you will live to see me appearing or coming in my royal glory or royal authority. So what's the context? What's the greater? So you have to read what came before and after that passage. So Matthew chapter 16, this passage is not prophetic. He's not talking about a second coming. He's talking about the Christian life. That passage begins with the famous phrase, "If any man come after me, let him take up his cross and deny himself, take up his cross and follow me." So he's saying the Christian life will be difficult. But then he goes on to say, you will be rewarded. for the Christian life. And when you stand before me, I will be at the right hand of my Father, and I will give you the reward. And there are some of you standing here who will live to see me in my royal authority. So what is Jesus saying in context? He says the Christian life is going to be difficult, but you will be rewarded. I have the authority to give you that reward. And there are some of you standing here who will see me appearing in that royal authority. What happens? Well, turn the page. What comes after Matthew chapter 16? Matthew chapter 17. And in Matthew chapter 17, you have the Mount of Transfiguration, where some of those who were standing there, 3 of his disciples, see him appearing in his royal authority. That's a much cleaner. It's like Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually the best one. If Jesus says, some of you will see me appearing in my royal authority, and then 6 days later, some of them see him appearing in his royal authority, doesn't that make much more sense doctrinally and in context than trying to fabricate a return of Jesus and all the tribulation stuff and the rule of the Antichrist and the mark of the beast happening in or around 70 AD when there's no documentation? And and Josephus, he wrote about these so-called chariots in the sky, but the people who told him about the chariots in the sky, they did not connect it to the second coming of Jesus. In fact, Josephus wrote that they saw it as an indication that they were going to lose the war to Rome, which they did. And that's another point, because if the siege of Jerusalem was Armageddon, then that means Jesus lost because Rome won the siege of Jerusalem. Rome kicked the crap out of the Jews, literally wiped Israel off the map. They renamed Israel after the ancient enemies of the Jews, the Philistines. They called it the land of the Philistines, which in Latin is Palestinia. That's where we get the word Palestine to this day. So the fact that that area up until 1948 was called Palestine is proof that the Romans won the war. So you telling me that Jesus got his ass beat by a bunch of Roman soldiers in the first century? I don't think so. The Bible is very clear that Jesus wins the Battle of Armageddon. Ergo, 70 AD could not be the Battle of Armageddon. So there really isn't any proof at all of any of these events happening in the first century or any time prior to that. And the last thing I'll say on that proves that we're not in the little season is because what does the Bible say that Satan is doing in the little season? It says Satan has one job once he's released after the 1,000 years, and people saying, we're sick of Jesus, we're going to overturn him. It says Satan is released and he has one job. He deceives the nations into battling against Jerusalem to overthrow Jesus. That is his only job. It is not a time of general deception. He's not trying to conquer the world. He's not executing Agenda 2030. He's not doing any of the things. He's not meeting with the Bilderbergers. He's not doing any of the things that are currently happening in this world. He's only going to be doing one thing and one thing only. Or as my millennial wife would say, you have one job. His one job is to gather the nations against Jerusalem. Why? Because that's where Jesus is. So in order for us to be in the little season, 2 things have to be happening. Number 1, Jesus has to be physically ruling from Jerusalem. And number 2, Satan has to be actively gathering nations to battle against him. If those 2 things are not in place, we are not in the little season.
I mean, it sounds like open and shut. What is it saying?
I do want to say this, Sam. I know that people get really upset about this because you're going to get a whole bunch of angry little season people in your comments, and I'm going to get even more. They get really emotional about it. And I want to say this. I understand what's going on. There's a contradiction in your mind. Our unconscious mind hates contradictions. Our unconscious mind is 90% of our brain. I think we talked about this once before where people say, well, we only use 10% of our brain. No, we don't. We use 100% of our brain. We're only in conscious control of 10% of it. Like when you drive a car, you're in conscious control of the steering wheel and the brakes and the accelerator. 90% of it is happening, behind the scenes. Same thing with our brain. So the 90% of our brain that controls our heartbeat, when we get scared, we don't say heart beat faster, lungs start expanding. No, our unconscious brain does that. When you see somebody you like, who you're attracted to, you don't say, okay, I want blood to flow to my loins. No.
Loins, activate.
I've said that before.
Like Inspector Gadget. That's great.
But your unconscious brain does that, and it follows patterns to help you be alert to reality. Hey, there's someone you're attracted to. Go get them. I'm going to communicate with you through feelings and through emotions and through your mind and through those neurotransmitters. Hey, you're walking in the woods. There's a bear. Get out of there. I'm going to, dilate your pupils so you see better. I'm going to send blood to your extremities. It's trying to help you see reality. And because it wants you to see reality, the biggest enemy of your unconscious brain is contradictions. It hates contradictions, and anytime it sees one, it wants you to resolve it. And we talked before, there is a seeming contradiction between a loving God and an evil world. And then the little season theory comes along and says, contradiction resolved. Jesus, we have been abandoned, and we're here under the rule of Satan, and because God designated it so. Now, it's a bleak and hopeless outlook, but it satisfies our unconscious brain, and our unconscious brain will then reward us with pleasure chemicals, saying, good, you resolved the contradiction. We love that. But then a guy like me comes along and says, oh, no, we're not in the little season. And here's the proof that we're not. And your unconscious brain says, no, we resolved that contradiction. Make it go away. That guy wants to get us back to the contradiction. Get him. And that's why I get so much emotional reaction. A couple of weeks ago, I did a debate with a couple of people who believe in the little season, and it went south quick. I mean, one guy got so mad, he just stormed off and just turned his, yeah, seriously. I'm like, dude, that's
why? I don't understand why you would get so angry about, I mean, now you are literally discussing religion, I suppose. So you can expect some fervor, but that's what was he upset? What did you say specifically that upset?
Oh, well, because I didn't answer a question the way he wanted. He brought up a verse in Revelation chapter 1 where John is writing a greeting, and he says, Jesus will be coming, he will be coming in the clouds, and every eye will see him, including those who pierced him. And he says, well, this is proof that he must have returned in the first century because the people who pierced him were the Roman soldiers. So that's what that means. And he says, I want you to answer this and just give me a simple answer. And I'm like, I don't give simple answers. I'm not a simple person. I don't dumb it down. If you want a simple, dumbed down answer, ask a simple or dumb person. I am neither. So we need to talk context. And he didn't want to. He says, no, just answer the question. I'm like, I am answering it, but you don't get to ask me a question and then set the parameters by which I answer it. You will get the answer.
It's not a congressional hearing, yes or no.
Yeah. Oh, those are so frustrating, John. You're right. I was listening to the ones when RFK was being confirmed.
Yeah, me too. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah.
And aside from the fact that listening to him makes my throat hurts when I listen to him. I'm like, dude,
imagine his phone sex conversations.
Oh my God, no. but he got upset because I wouldn't give him a simple answer. He says he's either yes or no. It's like, no, it's more complicated than that. John was giving a common greeting. John lived in the Greco-Roman world. When you would write a letter to someone, you would give them a big picture overview. You would say, I hope that you prosper and are in great health. So do you mean that literally, that you are going to prosper, and if you're not, and I want you in great health? Or are you just giving them a greeting, a big picture? John is saying that, greetings, Jesus will return soon. Every eye will see him, even the people who pierced him. He's not speaking chronologically. He's saying that everyone living or dead will witness the return of Jesus, including the people who killed him, because that was probably on their minds. This was in the lifetime of people who would have witnessed the crucifixion of Jesus. So he's saying that everyone, even those who thought they had him and nailed him to the cross, literally, and got rid of him, even they are going to be witnesses to his return. That's what it was saying. Not that it was chronological. And he wasn't trying to hear me. And he says, okay, you have no answer. I'm done. I'm out. And he just clicks off his.
And we're going to know, soonish whether they're right? I mean, if the 1,000-year reign is to come to an end, soonish, right? We should see.
We should see some things happening, but we don't see that in the world. First of all, Jesus is not in Jerusalem. I've checked; he ain't there. I've had people who visited Jerusalem, but my point is that this emotionalism is based on our unconscious minds, people who believe it, not wanting to have that contradiction brought back. But my assurance to them is that there isn't a contradiction. That if you look at the pattern of how God does things, things always go from bad to good through worse. Things get bad, then they get worse, then they get better. And there's so many examples that I give them in my book, like the flood. Things look pretty bad right before the flood, but God intervenes. When Israel was in Egypt, things looked bad. Things got worse. Then God intervened. Look at Jesus. Jesus came to earth. They crucified him. He was in the ground for 3 days and 3 nights. But then God intervened, like he always does. And that's where we are now. God has not abandoned us. So don't abandon hope. And that's how I want to end my book, by just saying that we're in tough times now, but it's not hopeless. God will intervene like he always does. So again, God has not abandoned you. God says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So he will never leave us for a long time under our enemy, especially when it says a little season. And that term in Greek is mikros chronos. Chronos means time. Mikros means little. It's where we get the word micro. So, and we see it elsewhere in the book of Revelation in chapter 6. He tells when the martyrs are crying out and they say, how long, Lord, oh Lord, until you avenge us? He says, just wait a little season. Same term, mikros chronos. And in that case, it only means a few months. So this is not going to be decades or hundreds of years. I know you had a guest on earlier this year, a couple months ago, who said that we've been in the little season for 200 and some years. That's not a mikros. That's not micro. That's not. It's a little. I mean, if you encounter a dude with a micro penis, you're not gonna be like, dude, that's a long. No, you're gonna be like, bruh. I hope you got some mad oral skills or a lot of money, because I mean, small. And see what I just did. Now I just impressed little season with micro penis. So now every time you think little season, you're gonna think micro penis.
Oh man, you just ruined it for them. Now they're really upset. Now they're gonna come at you.
Now that's where the hate mail's coming from.
Micro season.
Little dick
Micro
dudes
season.
getting angry.
No, but in all seriousness, don't abandon hope, because God hasn't abandoned you.
Ed, great episode, buddy. This has been fire. I want you to come back. There was something you said earlier you could do a whole nother show on.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the return of the old gods. We touched on that, but I think that's huge. In fact, my first book on the false apocalypse, I go into that, how I think that, how I know the old gods are coming back, and the Bible talks about them. And I think they know that they're going to get kicked out of heaven, and they're preparing us for it. They've been prepping us for it for a while. All those old gods who people worshiped in the past, they're going to come back.
So what are they? What are they?
They're fallen angels. They're fallen angels.
Fallen
in
angels. What you mean when you say that?
Yeah, and just real quick. So in Revelation, in Genesis 6, it says that the Nephilim were the mighty men, or the Gibborim of old, the men of renown. They were legendary figures: Hercules, Achilles, and the Sumerian variants of it, like Gilgamesh and whatnot.
Evil.
All of those.
Evil.
Yeah.
All, without exception.
The Nephilim are irredeemably evil because they're not God's creation.
Fascinating.
That's very fascinating.
Right, because that was the goal. That's why they created the Nephilim, not because they just like to bang earth chicks, but because
who doesn't?
Who doesn't? But because they knew that God gave the world over to humans who are spiritual physical hybrids. So they said, if we have our own spiritual physical hybrids and they wipe out humanity, then they can legally claim the earth. That's why they married the women. They didn't just have sex with the women. It didn't say they fornicated with the women of earth. They said they married them. They entered into a marriage covenant. So to make it all.
What do you think Nephilim divorce was like?
I'm guessing that it was literally till death do you part.
Yeah.
I thought the angels weren't sexed, though. I thought the angels weren't sex gendered. I thought they weren't.
It said that, right. Well, Jesus said that the angels in heaven do not have sex, but he meant they don't have sex with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Okay, so but they
can take on
male though. Like if they do engage in a sex act, they're all masculine. Is that?
Yeah. Every good angel is always masculine, but there is precedent for fallen angels taking on female form. He called them the succubus. So again, that's a whole other thing as well. So they can do that. They can take. We know they can mimic biological traits because we have the angels that come down and eat. When Abraham encountered two angels, they ate food. And when Jesus in his resurrected body, he ate all the time. Every time Jesus appeared, he asked for food. Which
he's like, hook me up.
That's one thing about that gives me some, because as a child it troubled me that heaven sounded like it was going to be incredibly boring.
Oh, no.
But when I grew older, I studied those things, and like you see, like you said, Jesus eating, and that's one of the great pleasures of life is being able to eat
and drink. Jesus said that there's going to be wine in heaven. He said that next time you see me, we're going to have a bottle of wine.
Yeah, so
one last thing to keep in mind, Johnny, is that we're not going to spend eternity in heaven. We're going to spend eternity on the new
earth, right?
Yeah. And we're basically, God gets back what he originally wanted, which is us ruling from earth, hanging out with him. And we're going to all live in our uniqueness. And we are going to continue to grow in our uniqueness and interact with each other.
And have bodies again.
For eternity. Yeah, exactly. We're going to keep learning and growing and learning and growing. and getting closer to God for eternity. And because we'll be doing what we uniquely love and are passionate about, you never get tired of it. Like I'm sure Sam, you never get tired of doing comedy. This is your passion. You want to do it all the time.
30 years, dude. 30 years. It's a long time for a guy who's 25. Ed, this is great. Ed, you have an open door to come back anytime you want. Love to hear about the old gods. There's one more thing you said earlier you wanted to talk about, but you said it would be a whole nother show. But
Oh no, I talked about the Antichrist and how I think he's going to be a clone.
Yes.
Oh, baby.
No, we'll do another discussion because that all ties in with my first book, which is The False Apocalypse. So we'll talk about the old gods because I think they're going to come back and pretend to be aliens or ascended masters and saying, "Hey, we've come." They're kicked out of heaven, out of the heavenly realm, and they're forced to materialize. And they'll say, "Oh no, we're your space brothers. We created you, and we're here during this troubled time to guide you into light." And they're going to help institute the Antichrist. He's going to be their guy because, and I'll end with this. Keep in mind that the goal of these entities are not to rule us. It's to wipe us out. They don't want.
I totally agree. I think
Not
that's
gonna
what
rule
this
world.
depopulation stuff is right now.
They want to wipe us all out and then seed the world with their Nephilim again. That's been their goal from the beginning. And they're going to.
These mother. Oh, it's crazy, dude. It was a great episode, Ed. As always, you dropped the hammer. It was a great episode. One more time, tell them where they can find you and anything you want them to check out.
Sure. So faithbyreason.net is my legacy website. You can also go to my Patreon that Johnny has up right now. That's where all the action is. That's where you can get my books. My books they're also on Amazon as well. If you want to pay the Jeff Bezos tax, I just want you to get the material. Get it any way that you want. Bonus episodes, Q&As, all that stuff is there. Interact with me. We have a great time there. I'm also on all the free feeds. YouTube has my 60 episode Revelation series, Instagram, X. I'm on all of those. But again, Patreon is where it's at, and faithbyreason.net. So enjoy the books. The book on the Little Season book. I think I take a really deep dive into it. And if you're interested in it,
I love it, dude. It was a great episode. I appreciate you coming on. I think it was great, and we'll make sure all the links are below. It was a great episode, man. I enjoyed it. I know our listeners will enjoy it as well.
Awesome.
And we look forward to the next one, brother. Thank you so much for coming on. Ed Mabrie bringing that fire. Guys, what did you think? Xavier Guerrero.
He is bringing the fire, but I'm not excited. The fire he's going to bring is all the little people upset about the little season.
Okay.
That's going to be some fire. Fire in the comments.
little people?
All the little. So you're talking midgets?
All you pathetic idiots out there listening to this show.
All these midgets are mad because it's little and that's their time to rock. Now, Xavier, you got a giant cross on you. Are you super religious now?
I've been super religious. I've always had a cross. You remember my joke about doing coke off the cross?
Oh no, dude! How dare you?
How could you forget that classic of comedy, Sam?
That's a classic, dude. It's talked about in all the comedy scenes.
How dare you?
When are you getting a cross? That not.
I don't. I just wonder if the cross is actually
more of a Catholic thing,
symbol for Jesus' love.
It's like that Hicks joke, dude.
Yeah, it's
Speaking
a famous
of comedy classics,
Yeah.
Like
going up to meet Jackie Onassis with a little shotgun,
rifle pendant on you. Just thinking of John, Jackie. Thinking of John.
So who knows what the Vatican has convinced us to do. Yeah, I thought it was fire, dude.
I got a question. You mentioned about finding a church. How you going about that?
Google.
Just Google. You're going off a Yelp.
I found one near me. It's only a couple blocks. It's not quite walking distance. It's just that little too far for walking distance. I could walk it if I wanted to.
I don't understand why you're not going Protestant.
I don't know, man. I just I have a couple friends Giovanni Vuk, who's talked about being Orthodox. I've watched a couple people talk about it. Well, Johnny, what is your thoughts?
Well,
are you a Protestant? And what's the difference?
Absolutely.
And what's the difference?
Well, I mean, there are some pretty major differences. It really depends on, the denomination of Protestantism you're comparing to, but there's some pretty major I suggest you look into that as you.
Well, can you tell me some of them, Mr. Major differences?
And I was about to say, is it as major as like when you're Catholic, how the Virgin Mary didn't get it? Like,
Well,
is
I
it
mean,
that big difference or no? Very small.
like for Protestants, like the Bible is the only authority, but for Orthodox people, you have the Scripture and like the traditions of the church. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I
like apostles and saints and all that stuff, which is extra biblical if you ask a Protestant. It's kind of new world Protestantism. But.
Oh, the Orthodox is the new world and the Protestant is the old world?
No. Orthodox is old world.
That's just the Bible.
Well, and like Protestants, like Orthodox believe that many anyway, that when you're doing the sacrament, you're like literally eating the flesh of Jesus. Like there's an actual transformation that goes on in that process and drinking the blood of Jesus. And that's really quite secondary. It's much more wrapped up in the
Which one would you call old school? What would you call
Orthodox? Is more old school.
That's what Daddy wants,
but not in the way that it's closer to the source. I would say it's kind of built up all these trappings that people have kind of wedged in there. It's closer to Catholicism, really, is what we're talking, and all the crazy shit. You know, they've kind of put like confession. Like you trying to go in for confession.
No.
No, did you tell him? Because that'd be a long day for Sam.
Yeah, I'd be like page 47.
I mean, that's part of it. And then like
where can I just hear about my man Jesus? That's all I want to do.
Orthodox often, I think, believe that faith and you're not saved by just your faith, like just by the power of Jesus, but also you have to be good to get into heaven. Where it's Jesus says the guy who's dying on the cross next to him, who's a thief, also going to heaven.
All right, we'll figure it out. Maybe
there's a lot of things. It's a lot of the way the church is run, like the liturgy.
Who's got the hot chicks?
It's a lot stuffier Orthodox churches, in my experience, and I've been to several.
Johnny, you didn't hear? Who's got the hot chicks?
That really depends on the city.
Location.
Location.
Location. Now, do you go to church, XG?
It's been a while since I went to church, but I used to go to Catholic church. I've confessed. I've been baptized.
I'm here illegally.
Protestants don't pray to Mary either. Like like Catholics and Orthodox are always praying to Mary, which most Protestants think that's kind of wacky.
Okay, all right. Well,
what about getting baptized?
I think I was baptized. I have to ask my mom.
They should ask.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's a bigger difference. Okay, like Baptists, like people like I am, believe that you should only be baptized once you take on the faith, whereas Catholics are baptizing little babies that don't know anything about Jesus.
Yeah, because technically that's how you save the baby. Like, what if the baby dies?
We're trying to save babies, Johnny.
Save the babies, dude. We gotta save the babies.
Yeah, but the Protestants kind of intellectual. Like, does that make any sense? Really? Not like that Jesus cares about a baby getting a drop of water on his head.
No, yeah, it makes sense. That also, see that it does. It does. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I would.
We live in interesting times, boys. I thought it was great. I think Ed's a great conversation. I know a lot of people are going to love it. Some people that don't want us to get too Christian probably aren't going to have the best experience. And apparently Xavier midgets are going to hate it. So, I mean, I thought it was great. I love it. I want to make sure everyone knows. Last night, the Comedy Store was so crazy, and it was a long show, and it was mentally taxing. That's why I was yawning. The information was amazing. And some people go,
yes,
Sam, get off your phone. This phone never stops texting. It never stops ringing, never stops anything. Sometimes there's things I have to get done at that time. So please understand, I am multitasking, okay? My brain is broken, but it is a supercomputer. It's the original iPhone. I can do 19 things at once, okay?
The original iPhone.
It's the original iPhone.
Steve Jobs knew you? Steve Jobs knew you?
Steve Jobs was near a Starbucks near me and just heard me talking and goes, multitasking phones. Dude, this is how old I am. Do you guys remember on the iPhone you couldn't talk and be on the internet?
I absolutely remember.
Yeah,
And
100%.
then I remember one day I was just on my phone. I'm like, I'm gonna try it, and I got on the internet, and I was like, oh, I broke this thing.
That was a big deal, dude. There's so many things now that we take for granted that were monumental when they first happened. Just, we're so fortunate.
I gotta get that above phone going. I have one. I gotta get it going.
Isn't it crazy that Siri and Alexa are still so useless? When now I've noticed that that people, when they interact with Siri, they expect it to that they've been spoiled by ChatGPT, so they expect to be able to have a conversation with it, and it's just not there, dude. And there's real concern now. I've been reading a lot of the journalism about tech journalism, and there's real concern that Apple might get left in the dust here because they're not
really.
Well, yeah, because so Johnny,
there's so much of the market. Though.
But here's the thing: Johnny Ive, the guy who was
Johnny Ive. That sounds like the greatest porn star name ever.
Ive.
Hey, it's starring Johnny Ive.
Do you remember him? He was the heart and soul of Apple, along with Steve Jobs. When Steve Jobs came back in the late '90s, he found Johnny Ive, the designer, and he was responsible for the look of the iPhone and all, so much of their hardware. All those Macs and stuff were all designed by him. He left because it was there's this great book that I read. I called After Steve, about how there was a battle for the soul of Apple between the guy who was the hardcore factory who knew everything about the supply lines. That was Tim Cook, the guy who's now the CEO, and then Johnny Ive, the guy who saw it.
I guess we know who won. Spoiler alert.
Exactly. Much more as an art. So he had this other company that just got acquired by OpenAI, and they've announced they just did this really cheesy video last week, Johnny Ive and Sam Altman in a cafe, where they announced that there's going to be a new product.
Is Johnny Ive the guy with the beard?
No, he's bald. He's bald, kind of a little heavy, but looks masculine. He's an English guy. Apple,
And he has a weird outfit on in the picture where they're kind of holding each other like this.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. And they announced that they have a new product designed specifically for AI, interacting with AI. People speculate it's going to be some kind of wearable, but nobody really knows. And a lot of people say that this is the big threat. This is the thing, because Steve Jobs famously was always looking for the next product that could destroy their market share. That's why he invented the iPad, or not invented, but why he released the iPad, why they got to iPhone to begin with. They were going to do an iPad first, actually, but then they realized, oh wait, shit, if all of these iPod features go onto a phone, we're screwed. We're sunk. So I think maybe it's a lack of foresight, a lack of creativity now that's left Apple in the lurch.
So what you're saying is one day you might go to a Google phone or Android phone type of thing? You think it's that?
What about a bub phone, Johnny?
I don't think it'll be a phone. I think that's the thing. I think that those will be, what would you say? There will be
Johnny, we're just going to be like,
disambiguation.
hello, hello, hello. I just keep getting calls in my head.
Well, I don't, that's what I'm saying. I don't think people are going to want to get their notifications for calls and shit on whatever wearable. There's going to be your phone stays in a drawer when you don't want to get calls and don't want to be bothered. And then AI is going to be so smart. It's going to know when it's your mom calling versus some spam or some shit you don't have to deal with right now. And it is going to send only relevant notifications to whatever wearable or whatever you have on. But anyway, yeah, that's that.
All right, Johnny. That's interesting.
I follow that very closely. The text.
Johnny, you're a nerd dork. Of course
Absolutely.
you do. That's your Game of Thrones.
I wear it, baby.
I wear it. Guys, you want to love Sam Tripoli? You want to love Tinfoil Hat? You want to love Johnny? Come see me live. You want to love Xavier? Go to samtripoli.com. Cleveland, Ohio. Pittsburgh, PA. San Diego. Boston. Broadbrook. Kansas City. Tulsa, Oklahoma, and New Orleans. More dates to come. Again, if you want to love Tinfoil Hat, you need to check out the new Tinfoil Hat YouTube page. Look at that. Look at the hard work Xavier's doing. Go to videos.
It's right
Go
there.
to video. Look at that. Bang.
Go
to Tinfoil Hat. YouTube.com/Tinfoil Hat YouTube.
Best comment gets a free hat. So go leave a comment on the page,
Xavier,
and best comment leaves the best hat. DM me, and I will promise you a best hat for being one of the first people over there at Tinfoil Hat.
Okay, go back to Sam Tripoli. All the videos, if you can't go on YouTube, you hate it, samtripoli.com has everything. My Patreon, I got to put on a new content. I've been slammed these last couple of weeks. I'm trying to put up 3 a week. Sometimes I can't get there, but everything I put up is pure fire, whether it's whatever this is, which is one of the greatest conversations in the world, deep conspiracy rewinds, only conspiracies, all there on Sam Tripoli. Cash Daddies is fire right now. Johnny, tell us about the Cash Daddy fire.
Yeah, Howie is we last month was
We're up
a
another
bump,
6.
but yeah, this last month was bumpy for everybody, I think. But yeah, Howie is very optimistic about this month, and the community there is again strong as ever. People always
dude support that guy's
ideas.
hair.
And yeah, Howie's got the best hair. Eddie Munster, Howie has got the best hair.
Eddie, funny for that gel.
Dude, look at that. That guy looks like he wants 101 Dalmatians. Go up a little bit. Right there. That guy looks like he's going after 101. Everyone's calling them the monsters. The Munsters. Yeah. Yeah. So go there. Go to back to samtripoli.com. That's patreon.com/cash daddies. Go down. Chaos Twins is a coming. Second issue, go. Guys, grab your ticket. Grab your issue now. Come to the live show. I'll sign it for you. Our good friends again at Live Longer Formula. That's right, dude. Grab that one. Go to t-shirts.com real quick. tinfoil@t-shirts.com. Guys, we are putting up t-shirts constantly. Great way to support the show. Common Sense, the Blue Beam shirt. Go down. You know, some of the old classics are a little bit at discount too.
$15. $15 for a t-shirt. Come on, guys.
That's straight out of the sweatshop. That's how cheap that is. Look at that. Join us. Help us. Help you. Help us. Help you. Help us. It's a great way to support the show. Go back. Okay, let's go through it. We got Live Longer Formula. We love them. They're a big sponsor of the show now. Okay, check them out. Check out Rife Technologies. Getting right. Matt Rife is fire on Twitter, dude. Great way to get yourself centered. Buy Gold and Silver, one of our premier sponsors. I'm constantly getting precious metals from every month. I'm part of the Wolfpack program.
Wise Wolf.
Wise Wolf. Wise Wolf. Mineral King. My man Pat Miletich, UFC Hall of Famer, helping you get rid of parasites, helping you make your soil better. AquaCure Hydrogen Brown Gas. Still, people are buying it. It's good for you. Hydrogen helps you live longer, according to Hydrogen Brown Gas. Harley Ray, we love them. If you need crystals, you need sage, you need anything, that's where you go, okay? I took it in between shows. Chemical-free body. I'm going to try to work with him on getting out some nicotine. I take their supplements every day. Every day I take their supplements. And when I don't take them, I feel it. I really do, dude. I'm dragging. So, you know, one of the best supplements on the planet. Dude, Joel Staley, want to get in shape? Get rid of those bitch tits. Let's go, dude. And then EMF rocks, that dirty energy. Prometheus, Leonard Joni has got a Prometheus website. She's going to be putting her own content on her own website, decentralized, so these scumbag fascists can't take down her content. And then Brain Supreme, you heard some really great questions by Xavier Guerrero. Bang. That's it. Thank you. Nuke Social. It's a great way to get all my social media in one place. Tinfoil Hat, Only Conspiracies. Really live community there. A lot of great talk. Zero, going to bring that back, but the Telegram's there. Go down. And then all my episodes there. Check out Doom Scrolling, Deep Waters, Conspiracy Social Club, Union of the Unwanted, Punch Drunk, wherever we get that, Cash Daddies, and the darling now is Broken Sim. We've been doing great numbers on that. We're hurling towards what I hope will be 100K very soon. And so, yeah, everyone support it. And then all my specials go down. All my radio, all my specials are there. I'm going to have them put my new crowdwork special below that, so you can check that out. Anything else, guys?
Hit that like button, subscribe, and I'm raffling this off. Look into it. By Sam Tripoli. If you want to know how to get it, go to Extreme Marks the Spot podcast on YouTube. Just go look for it, and you might win this poster.
Wow. Johnny, would you like to share anything?
Yeah, I'm gonna be raffling off my what do I got here? This pin right here. You can head to at Broken Sim, follow me, and one of you, I'm not gonna say whoever, but one of you will win this pin right here.
Oh, go get it,
Broken
guys.
Sim on Twitter.
Go get it.
All right,
Johnny
guys.
uses it.
Great show. Enjoy these highlights.
I'm not raffling off that pin.
Here's a clip from the latest Broken Sim.
You're serious about that too, right?
Yeah, I want, you know, Daddy partied a little back in the day. I'd love to put a gold tooth in there, but you can't see it.
Yeah. Speaking of Dana, the other night I was there at like midnight to work in the new studio. I was there.
Johnny,
till
thank
5
you for
a.m.,
your
by the way.
service.
And we're standing out. It's completely dark. You hear nothing but crickets on the street. And she's like, "Oh yeah, before you go," she's about to hand me the key. She says, "The other night I was sitting out in the yard, and from inside the studio, I heard somebody knocking on the window."
There's a ghost.
Well, thanks.
There's a ghost.
And so
It
she's
just
like,
disappears.
Sam and I just went in there with the knife and like
I
cleared
went
it
in with a
room by
big
room.
knife. I went this way.
Why didn't you
Like,
have the survival
shit.
spear? You should have had a survival spear, dude.
Oh, where is it?
And
Yeah, I gotta find
and then
it.
she go, and then I was like, well, so nobody was in there, right? And she's like, no, must have been a ghost, and just handed me the key. And dude, I was every noise the whole night. It scared the shit out of me.
Yeah,
bro.
it's there's my.
You think
place
it's
is
really haunted, really?
Yeah, it gives me hand jobs at night.
Because you're psychic, so you would know if it's haunted. Do you feel like it's haunted?
Johnny,
really?
I feel like that was sarcasm,
No,
and you were cutting at me.
no. So this is fascinating. There is a war going on against illegal hot dog vendors because they are destroying small business in San Diego. Now, this
And,
guy you
dude,
see,
they're probably cartel.
yeah, I'm probably people who have their
That's
passports.
how they pay. That's how they pay off getting to America.
Yeah,
is
their
they do these
passports are in some guy's drawer somewhere,
bacon
locked
hot
up
dogs.
until they pay him off. Yeah, until they can get their passport back and pay the guy. So yeah, it sucks for them. But this guy is the guy who runs Henry's Pub that is closing for good because of these, and they're everywhere, dude, everywhere. And he gets pissed off, and here's what happened. He overturns the cart. It's a Trump. It's a black guy too, isn't he? He looks like a black guy.
Finally, white guys are involved.
You not saying out this bitch. We want to scam motherfuckers on their credit cards. Fuck you. You're scamming ass bitch. Fuck you.
Is it scamming people on their credit cards too? So yeah, I mean, it's just
Johnny, I've said this before. Johnny, how does it feel to be to work with someone very closely that psychic abilities allow you to tell the future? I've said this forever. Hot dog carts, food trucks should not be allowed anywhere near brick and mortar restaurants. Okay? I as a new libertarian, Johnny, I'm dipping my toes into the
I
water.
like that.
Okay?
Welcome.
Well, I am registered as a libertarian.
Me too. The water's warm. Join us.
Okay, I'll cannonball into that shit. All right, don't worry about that. I'll piss in the pool. You think I'm afraid? Because there's no rules.
I
to say
do not
can't
think
piss.
you're afraid. You know, it's a myth that they have shit that can make the water red if you piss in the pool. Complete
I've
myth.
seen it turn yellow before. I've seen it happen. in
Yeah,
real
I've seen
videos.
yellow too. Yeah, yellow. Yeah,
So,
not
anyways,
red.
so my problem is that the brick and mortar play, and this is why the Democrats are dog shit people. Okay, they allow businesses to operate with, and I'm against fee of entry, which is permits, all that shit. Okay.
Yes.
I'm against that because that's taxation on success. Okay. But you have those people who have to play by all these rules, the health department, all that shit, against people that don't have to do any of that. And it's impossible to compete against that in the long run. So they shouldn't be allowed within 1,000 feet of a business that is brick and mortar and has to do health checks in terms of the quality control or whatever I just said it was, the health department. They shouldn't be allowed within 1,000 feet of that shit. That's my opinion.
I completely agree.
Because you're destroying businesses. And the hot dog vendor isn't hiring anybody but his family, which I respect because you're taking care of your family. But you're not hiring the population to help the economy. That money isn't going back into the economy. It's a little bit to pay your rent. I get that, but really, it's going back into the cartels. And
What's
the whole
the
thing
answer,
now,
though? Just cracking down on them with police and stuff. What do you do?
if you're within 1,000 feet of a brick and mortar, you're shut down. Go set up shop over there, and I know there's no traffic, but deal with it. Because here's where people have to play by the rules, which I think are stupid. The health department, I'm fine with, because you don't want to eat something that's got bacteria and shit all in it.
Yeah, you're right.
Right? But at the end of the day, you're competing with someone who has to pay a big fee to do what he's doing, do what they're doing.
What can you? I mean, I just don't. You won't believe how many Mexicans are in San Diego right now.
Yeah,
dude.
but Johnny, I can't believe it because it's right next to Mexico.
I mean, there are more Mexicans than white people though in San Diego. It's crazy.
Yeah, but
bro.
Johnny, that's like being on the other side of the wall of China and being shocked that there's Chinese people.
No, because the Wall of China is in China. San Diego is in the United States. That's the difference. Our border is just a
but
sieve.
it was Mexico.
Yeah, but these people aren't descended from the people who were here before.
Yeah, they are. They're all illegals, a lot of them.
That's what I'm saying. That's different. Those are recent migrants, not people who were just here when the borders were changed.
Daddy's got to jump.
All right, I just want to show you one more thing. Just want something that you'll like.
Daddy's got to jump. What part of that didn't you understand?
Just watch this one thing. So my grandma shared this. She shares these fake AI stories all the time on her Facebook, dude. So this one, there's this page that has invented this character called Tyrus, this black guy, and just has him doing all kinds of fake news
and
shit.
You know what else it is? Tyrus looks exactly like that guy that's on Grunfield. He looks exactly like that
him.
guy.
No, that's what I was going to say. It is him. They're putting him in different. So it says Tyrus adopts 10-year-old boy with autism, a decision that touched everybody. They said that they found this boy in a landfill. It's because whoever had him decided that since he had autism, they were just going to take him to the landfill. And him and his snow bunny wife here adopted him. You can see my grandma.
Could not be whiter either. Is that his real wife, by the way?
I don't know. It's just all fake.
Imagine if your white daughter brings home that as her new boyfriend.
This is my grandma here. She wrote, "We love you and your wife. Thank you for giving love to this young boy. God is good." And so you go to this page, right? It's called Untold Stories, Backroom Broadcasts. And they just take Gutfeld and put him, look at this, like in all these fake AI like story photos. Tyrus cradles Greg Gutfeld's baby. Clearly a fake image. And it's like a whole underground economy of fake shit that gets shared around.
Dude, that show is huge. I know guys who do it, and now they sell tons of tickets.
Like Tyrus going to a nursing home here. Like I'm going to a nursing home, fake. There's Gutfeld with another fake baby. Look at that. That toy is half out of the box, half in the box somehow.
Oh, he's a pro wrestler?
I don't know what the hell is happening. Tyrus recently made a touching visit to a children's hospital. And it's like
it's always white kids, too.
Yeah, always. It's always trying to play on your desire for racial integration. Look at this baby's hair, dude. Look at this. Anyway, I just thought that was crazy. It's all Greg Gutfeld and like AI and Tyrus doing amazing shit.
In that picture, does he look like the director of Star Wars?
If you'd like to hear the rest of this episode, subscribe to Broken Simulation in your podcasting app or check us out at youtube.com/Sam Tripoli.
We go deep, homeboy. Aaron, open your mind. Drink from the fountain of knowledge. There's lizard people everywhere. That's some interdimensional shit. Wake up, Aaron.
This is only the beginning.
Dude, you just blew my mind.
Tinfoil hat.